Gojo is a friendless bum who avoids the hoes to make sus cosplays for his dolls at home. But when the most popular cosplayer girl discovers his costume making skills, she asks him to make cosplays for her and promises to repay him with naughty methods.
この辺でゴム外そっか。
Since he was little, Gojo fell in love with the Hina dolls crafted by his grandfather, Kaoru, and wanted to passionately make Hina dolls just like him. But when he shared his interest with his childhood friend, she called him a creep for liking girly things, which left him insecure about his passion. In the present, Gojo wakes up from that nightmare, still having the pain linger years later. That morning, he heads downstairs to help his grandpa with breakfast, and the old man asks Gojo if he has started expanding girls' creamy domains to prepare for the future. And Gojo, while embarrassed, assures him that he's clapping more bodies than Sukuna during the Shibuya incident. However, on his way to school, Gojo faces the painful truth that he's a lonely loser who can't make friends. Later, while zoning out in class, he thinks about how his passion for dolls isolates him, as he spends too much time focused on it. Suddenly, a blonde girl named Marin comes flying and accidentally hits her head on his desk. Her friends quickly run over to check on her, but she turns to Gojo and apologizes for the disturbance, while he's flustered that she even speaks to him. Later, Marin and her friends gossip about something that happened the day before, where some simp tried to rizz up Marin and mingle her melons, but when he mocked her love for anime, she roasted him, calling him a small pickle loser. Her friends question if she's too harsh, but Marin stands firm, saying that she can't stand people who make fun of others' interests. Hearing this conversation from nearby, Gojo can't help but relate. He holds his arm tightly, thinking how lucky Marin is to have people who accept her, unlike him. After school, Gojo stays behind alone to clean the classroom after the other students have left their cleaning assignments. While tidying up, the door opens and Marin walks in and starts helping him clean, which leaves him confused. Marin asks where everyone else went, and when she hears they all ditched their duties, she's clearly annoyed. Gojo says he doesn't mind, but Marin disagrees and tells him that he shouldn't let people walk all over him, but should express how he feels, leaving him stunned. A few days later, Gojo cuts his fingers while sewing, still thinking about Marin's words. Just then, he notices that the sewing machine isn't working anymore, so he comes up with a solution. The next day, after school, he borrows the home economics room's sewing machine and brings one of his dolls with him. Suddenly, Marin walks in, surprising him so badly that he almost drops his doll. He quickly dives to save it and gets ready to get mocked, but when he looks up, he sees Marin being amazed that Gojo knows how to sew and asks where he learns. So he tells her his family runs a Hina doll shop. Curious, Marin asks to see the doll he's holding, and when he hands it over, she compliments how beautiful it looks. Gojo is surprised, as no one has ever said something nice about his interests before. He tells her he can only make clothes, not dolls themselves, but when Marin hears that, she unbuttons her uniform, telling Gojo to turn around. He immediately obeys, confused about what kind of Johnny Sins scenario is going on. When she's ready, she presents herself in a simple black dress. Gojo asks about it, and she hands him a reference picture, explaining she's trying to recreate a costume. Gojo immediately sees everything wrong with it and gives her a harsh critique, calling her design trash. But when he notices Marin tearing up, he gets down on all fours and apologizes for being harsh. She assures him that she's not mad and explains that the dress is her attempt at cosplay, which to her is the ultimate way to show love for a character. That's when Marin gets an idea and asks Gojo if he can help her make cosplay outfits. Moved by her passion and remembering her words about accepting people's interests, Gojo agrees to help. Marin is thrilled and starts jumping around with joy, while Gojo watches, amazed that he's found a connection with someone like her. As they keep talking, Marin reveals the character she wants to cosplay, which is a character from a game where girls get creamed by dudes and make happy noises. Gojo asks Marin to repeat what she just said, and she proudly confirms she's a goon-loving degenerate who plays games where stepmom gets passed around. Marin fills him in that it's a dating sim about a guy who claps more girls than Genghis Khan's body count. And while Gojo tries his best to keep up, he's lost since he's never really played any games. He assumes she's messing with him until he sees the serious expression on her face. Marin starts gushing about her favorite character, Shizuku, and how she would like to become her. Gojo is stunned that a girl would even be into games like this. But Marin insists it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, as long as you can enjoy it behind a closed door. Her words remind Gojo of the time his childhood friend insulted him for liking girly stuff, and without hesitation, he agrees to help. They prepare to get started, and Marin whips out a book filled with instructions. He's amazed that she has a guidebook for her passion, but quickly realizes just how dumb she is that she's unable to follow the instructions. Then, Gojo tells her that before they begin, he'll need her measurements, but since it's already late, they agree to do it on Monday. However, the next day, the doorbell rings, and when Gojo opens the door, he's stunned to see Marin standing there. He asks how she found out where he lives, and she casually explains that she googled his name and then camped out in the bushes overnight. Gojo's clearly alarmed, but she distracts him with a cake and walks in like she owns the place. She heads straight to his room, and when she spots his brushes, she gets into a position that makes Gojo's slim gym want to turn itself into a fat gym, but he manages to quickly bury his creamy urges. Then, she tells him that they should start by taking her measurements, but Gojo turns beet red and suggests she find someone else. Explaining that the book says he needs to measure her in her underwear, Marin casually unbuttons her shirt to reveal she's wearing a swimsuit underneath, saying it's no big deal. Without much choice, Gojo takes a deep breath and begins with her head measurement, trying to keep his hands steady to avoid any accidental contact, and Marin agrees to keep her eyes closed to help him out. But when she suddenly opens them, Gojo yeets himself to the floor. Once he composes himself, he asks her to turn around to measure her shoulders. However, he gets flustered at the sight of her rice cakes and asks how she isn't embarrassed. Marin simply says she's focused on becoming Shizuku, and that means following the instructions exactly. After hearing that, Gojo slaps himself, apologizes for letting his mind wander, and decides to take things seriously. He takes all the basic measurements like a professional and writes them down. Then Marin asks him to measure her feet, saying she always has trouble finding the right fit. Gojo offers to get her a chair, but Marin jumps onto his bed and tells him it's the perfect height. Gojo panics, warning her that she's literally sitting on his discarded offspring, but she just lounges more comfortably. While he's still freaking out, she places her foot on his lap and tells him to get it over with. Gojo manages to finish the job, but Marin asks him to measure her bust. Gojo immediately says she should do that herself, but Marin complains it's hard to do accurately alone, then lifts her hair and tells him to do it. Reluctantly, Gojo leans in, close enough to hear her heartbeat, and starts sweating. To keep his mind from thinking of cheek clapping, he imagines getting his glizzy gobbled by your ugly exes and manages to get the measurement. Marin then says they still need to measure her bust point and inseam. Gojo imagines what that means and flat out refuses. Marin insists it's necessary to get the chest pattern right, but Gojo points out that he'd basically be aiming for a very specific target. Marin laughs at how embarrassed he is and decides to do it herself, but when she tells him that it's 7 inches, he can't help but imagine some other things he knows that could fit there.
What do you mean by that?
Then, Gojo gets ready to measure her inseam, and this time, he tells himself not to be flustered. But just as his hand brushes Marin, she blushes and squirms a little, feeling a tingle in her clam. Afterward, Gojo asks for visual references from the game so he can design the dress properly. She hands him 2 CDs and beams with excitement. Gojo tries to focus, but his eyes wander somewhere else, and he nearly paints his pants white. That night, Kaoru comes home to find Gojo glued to the game, looking for references. While Gojo is locked in for his costume project, Kaoru is surprised, thinking to himself how focused Gojo is to be taking notes to a game of girls getting creamed. That night, Gojo dreams that he's finally finished Marin's cosplay outfit and shows it to her. But then, Marin transforms into her character and begs him to bump bellies with her. Gojo jolts awake, and he realizes that he's wet, full of regret and shame. Embarrassed, he tells the Hina doll near his bed to look away so he can take care of creamy business. Later at school, Gojo dreads facing Marin, knowing she starred in his Mia Khalifa-themed dream. Just as he's overthinking, Marin walks down the hallway. Everyone turns to admire how pretty and popular she is. Gojo's thoughts drift to her in a swimsuit, and he struggles to control himself. He starts looking for a place to calm down, but Marin shows up and thanks him for helping her on Saturday. Gojo blushes hard, overwhelmed by his memories, but Marin just chats with him like usual. Just then, her friends show up out of nowhere, and they all chat him up, but when they see his facial reaction, they wonder if they should leave him alone since he looks nervous. Marin tries to keep things cool, but when she accidentally brushes his arm with her melons, it triggers the Twinkie to rise. Then, her friends remember they're late for class and leave, and Marin waves goodbye. Gojo feels relieved that Marin treats him normally even at school, but then hears nearby students gossiping, wondering if someone like Marin would ever date an ugly clown like him. In class, Marin excitedly runs up to Gojo, but he lies, says he's busy, and bolts faster than your girl when she sees that you're broke. For the rest of the day, Marin tries talking to him, but he keeps avoiding her until the school day ends, leaving her looking a bit down. As Gojo tries to leave campus, Marin finally catches up and asks if he wants to go shopping for cosplay materials. But when people start staring like he's guilty of some crime, Gojo says he'll pass and runs away. He hides behind a fence and quietly apologizes for ditching her, only to realize Marin is right next to him. She tells him not to run in the first place. When she asks why he's been avoiding her, Gojo says they should talk when no one's around so people don't think they're close. Marin just laughs and says that they are friends, and that it's too late to hide that. Gojo's stunned. He mentions the dating rumors, but Marin doesn't care and even teases him about it. She grabs his hand and pulls him toward the store. They arrive at a cosplay shop, and Gojo shows her his multi-angle sketch of Shizuku's costume. Marin's impressed to see that he went to so much effort. They decide which parts to buy and which ones to make. First, they pick fabric for the dress, and while Marin suggests a glossy black one, Gojo explains that since Shizuku is more elegant than flashy, the material should be thicker. When he sees the price, he admits he didn't bring any cash, but Marin tells him not to worry and pulls out an envelope full of money, encouraging him to spend what he needs. Gojo hesitates but agrees, and they continue shopping. After getting fabric, Marin leads them to a wig shop, and Gojo is stunned by all the options and various wigs. Marin points him to the black wigs, but Gojo suggests dark purple to match Shizuku's character color. Marin's surprised by how much he knows, and she listens as he explains the wig needs to be long enough to give her the right hairstyle. Marin admits she always chooses the wrong things on her own and says she's glad he came with her. In that moment, Gojo's heart warms at the idea of being helpful to a real person. Then, they go to a lingerie store to buy garters and stockings. Gojo freezes, terrified that he might get too excited, but Marin reassures him that couples shop here all the time. She treats him by showing him her garter, but Gojo begs her to stop, saying he might explode if she keeps going. Later, they grab a bite to eat. A nearby woman watches them with envy, wishing she were as carefree as Marin and Gojo. But when Gojo starts talking about the creamy scenes in Marin's game, the entire restaurant turns to stare in horror, thinking that Gojo is a total freak. Then, Gojo offers to take all the cosplay materials home and begin making the pattern. He asks Marin if there's somewhere she plans to wear the costume, and she tells him about cosplay events where people take pictures and post them online. She shows him a girl called Sajina who cosplays characters but never actually goes to events. As she continues showing off the pictures, she notices Gojo isn't saying much. She jokingly asks if he doesn't find real girls attractive. Gojo explains that he's an only child, and the first time he saw a Hina doll, he was amazed that something so beautiful could exist. So ever since then, he's only used words like beautiful for things that are truly special to him. Suddenly, Marin spots a food stall selling a giant meat-wrapped rice ball. She buys it and starts devouring it with joy, while Gojo politely declines her offer to take a bite. The sight reminds him he still owes her for ramen. He tries to pay her back, but Marin says the food is her treat. She tells him how happy she is that someone actually played the game she recommended and paid attention to the details, and that alone makes her feel appreciated. Hearing that, Gojo is touched. Suddenly, Marin offers him a bite of the meat she's been eating. He refuses, realizing it would be an indirect kiss. Marin suddenly asks if Gojo thinks she's eating like a fat pig, and while he says that he doesn't, his face says otherwise. She quickly starts defending her eating, saying she'll still fit into the dress just fine. Gojo asks when the cosplay event is. Marin says the next one is in 2 weeks. Then, realizing she's about to miss her train, she sprints off, leaving Gojo panicking and worried about how little time they have left. On the train ride home, Gojo can't stop thinking about how he's going to finish Marin's dress in just 2 weeks. He remembers how excited Marin is to wear it, which pushes him to get started immediately. But deep down, he knows it still might not be enough time. When Gojo gets home, Kaoru notices he's back later than usual. Gojo apologizes, explaining he lost track of time while shopping with a friend, but Kaoru is just happy that Gojo has friends at all. But when Kaoru sees the stockings Gojo picked up, the shock knocks him to the ground, thinking his grandson is wearing them. Later, at the hospital, Gojo's cousin, Miori, rushes in, worried about Kaoru. Gojo assures her it's not serious, and just then, Kaoru is discharged. Miori suggests he stay at her place for 2 weeks to rest. Gojo agrees it's for the best and promises to bring some of Kaoru's clothes the next day. But Kaoru is more concerned about his painting brushes. On the drive to Miori's house, Gojo feels stressed with what he's facing. Some days later, Marin finds out why Gojo wasn't at school. When she sees how worried he seems, she tells him to let her know if he needs anything. Gojo thanks her and says he'll be fine, so Marin suggests they exchange contact info. As they walk back to class, Gojo starts to panic, realizing he hasn't touched the outfit in 2 days. Then Marin reminds him that midterms are next week, and Gojo can't believe he forgot. With school, studying, and visiting Kaoru, He wonders how he'll ever find time to finish the dress. Marin asks if he's okay, and though he says he is, he knows deep down he's in serious trouble. That evening, Gojo gets a phone call from a visitor who wants to tour the Hina doll shop, since it's the only chance they'll have. Gojo agrees to give the tour, even though it means sacrificing more of his time. After the call, he crouches down, overwhelmed, unsure of how to handle it all. That entire week, Gojo struggles to balance everything from visiting Kaoru to leading tours and working on Marin's outfit. At school, Marin notices how distant and serious he's become, but when she wants to talk to him, he rushes out before she gets the chance. That night, she walks to his house but sees it's dark and quiet. Assuming she's not at home, she walks away sadly to eat noodles alone. However, inside the house is a complete mess, and Gojo lies on the floor, completely drained. He hasn't slept, and the outfit is far from finished. He remembers asking Kaoru once why he always brought his brushes, and Kaoru said that going even one day without them would make him rusty. Gojo can't even remember the last time he touched his own brushes, and he starts to doubt himself, wondering if he really has what it takes to make Hina dolls like his grandpa. The unfinished dress adds to his frustration, and painful memories of being called a creep by a childhood friend come flooding back, and Gojo breaks down, crying. He then recalls asking Kaoru if he ever got tired of making dolls every day, even if he loved it. Kaoru said the reason he could push through hard days was because of his love for it. He even showed Gojo a photo album full of happy customers to remind him why he does what he does. Thinking about how happy Marin will be in the dress gives Gojo strength. He wipes his tears, ties on his headband, and gets back to work. Then, on the day before the event, Marin is amazed that Gojo actually finished the dress. Gojo tells her she'll be able to attend the event after all, but Marin reveals she hadn't even picked an event yet, and that she was waiting until he finished the outfit first. While Gojo is relieved that he didn't ruin any plans, Marin begins to cry, realizing that Gojo has been pushing himself so hard for her without ever saying anything. She apologizes for not knowing what he was going through, and Gojo says it's partly his fault, too, as he kept working without telling her how tough it was. As Marin wipes her tears, Gojo suggests she try on the dress so he can check the fit. Marin hesitates, pointing out how exhausted he looks, but Gojo insists that seeing her happy is all that matters. Marin smiles through her tears and promises to wear the heck out of the dress. Gojo helps comb back her hair and gets the wig ready. They discuss Shizuku's makeup style and plan how to recreate the look. Gojo pulls out some false eyelashes, and Marin teases him, asking if they belong to his hidden baby mama. Gojo explains they're for the Hina dolls, who require more grooming than people think. Gojo excitedly shares how skilled craftsmen can identify a doll's maker just by the eyebrows, and says that he hopes to be able to make dolls like his grandpa someday. Marin tells him she's sure he can, and Gojo's smile makes her heart skip a beat. They get back to the makeup, and Marin takes off her clothes to change into the costume. When she calls Gojo back in, he's stunned as she looks exactly like the dream version of Shizuku he once imagined. Gojo tells her she looks perfect, and Marin thanks him for making her dream a reality. Gojo asks Marin how the dress feels, and she mentions that while it fits, she can't really lift her arms. That's when Gojo realizes he forgot to consider how well she'd be able to move in it. Marin then gives her jiggle physics a curious bounce and is shocked at how well he got the proportions right. She's also surprised that the skirt is the perfect length to show her character's degeneracy. Marin gets so excited that she begs Gojo to take pictures of her. He agrees and starts snapping a few shots, but tells her they just look like Marin playing dress-up. Since she's cosplaying, he suggests she strike some poses that match her character. Marin agrees and chooses a gray background for the photos. She tries to capture Shizuku's gloomy expression, but keeps smiling because she's having so much fun and is having the time of her life. When she tries again, she manages to stay in character, which surprises Gojo. He compliments her and takes more pictures until she's satisfied. When she looks through the photos, she's thrilled and quickly sets up an account to post them. In that moment, she decides she does want to attend the cosplay event and invites Gojo to come with her. The next day, they arrive at the event, and Marin is blown away seeing all the cosplayers there, and is even more hyped seeing all the cosplayers she's a fan of. She thanks Gojo again for helping make her debut happen, but he's too distracted by the crowd to focus. Marin notices and asks what's wrong. Gojo admits he feels awkward being surrounded by so many girls, and feels like everyone's staring at him. Marin jokes that they're probably just looking at her amazing costume, but Gojo thinks it's because he's underdressed. To cheer him up, Marin playfully grabs her plots and wiggles them, then drags him into the main plaza where more cosplayers are taking their pictures. There, a random dude with a camera recognizes her as Shizuku and excitedly asks for a photo. Marin's thrilled with the attention and agrees. Gojo steps back to give her space, and she easily switches into character, posing gracefully for the camera. Afterward, she even takes a selfie with the photographer, who gets flustered when being that close to her. More photographers begin to line up to take her photo after seeing her top-notch cosplay. Gojo watches her enjoy the attention while people of all kinds walk around in costume. Guys dressed as girls, girls dressed as guys, and it hits him how free everyone is to express themselves as their favorite characters. As he turns back to Marin, he feels proud to have helped her get here. But then the realization sinks in, as now that he's kept his promise, he might not spend time with Marin like this again. He realizes that if Marin hadn't been so open and enthusiastic, he never would have ended up in situations like hanging out after school or having a girl in his room for the first time. He quietly appreciates every moment like a passing dream. Just then, Marin looks over and gives him a huge smile, which makes his heart skip a beat. She jogs over to him with enthusiasm and says that she's glad he didn't sneak off. But suddenly, she admits her costume is falling apart. Gojo asks what's wrong, and Marin confesses she wore 2 special bras to match Shizuku's figure, and now her melons are about to burst out. She also complains that the thick fabric is way too hot, and she's starting to overheat. Gojo realizes that it was his bad mistake, as he was the one who chose the heavier material. They head inside to cool down and stop on a stairwell. Marin says she can't make it to the changing room, and Gojo hands her a cooling patch and offers her a towel to wipe her sweat off. Marin unties her necktie, revealing the twin puppies all men crave, and he looks away, flustered. He checks online for advice and sees suggestions to remove heavy clothing to avoid heatstroke. Marin, unfazed, asks him to unzip the dress a little to help her cool down. Gojo hesitates, but seeing how uncomfortable she is, he locks the F in and pulls the zipper down slightly. Marin makes happy noises in relief, and Gojo turns redder than a tomato. She then asks Gojo to wipe her back, and Gojo does what she asks. But when she starts squealing with relief, he tells her to tone it down before someone thinks that Gojo Jr. is being created. She lifts her shorts to let the breeze in and assures him she's wearing actual shorts underneath, and Gojo promises to make changes to the dress later to fix the heat issue. Before they head out, Marin says she has one last thing to do. Back at the plaza, she finds the woman she'd spoken to earlier and apologizes for running off. She poses for a final round of photos, and the woman thanks her and starts snapping shots. But just then, the wind lifts Marin's skirt right as the flash goes off. The woman panics and promises to delete the image, but Marin only cares about getting one where she's looking at the camera. After the event, Marin and Gojo board the train home. Marin thanks him again for all his hard work, and Gojo thanks her for such an unforgettable day. He starts to look a little sad, thinking this might be the end of their time together. But then, to Gojo's surprise, Marin asks him who she should cosplay as next. Thinking it was just a one-time thing, Gojo asks him if Shizuku is not enough. Marin laughs and tells him she has a lot of favorite characters. As she rambles about them, Gojo starts to smile again, realizing that he will continue to hang out with her. Marin catches his expression and teases him about it. Gojo admits that he's just looking forward to working with her again. Marin grins and says she'll even buy him a mannequin to help out. She turns to show him an example of one, but sees that he's already half asleep after all the late nights he pulled off. Marin starts talking about how much fun she had, but Gojo's barely able to keep his eyes open. Suddenly, just before he dozes off, Gojo looks at Marin, seeing her in her Shizuku costume, and he tells her she is beautiful. Marin freezes, and she remembers that Gojo once said he only uses the word beautiful for things truly special to him. His words turn her face bright red as she realizes what he just said to her, all the while he's sleeping peacefully next to her. Later on, they head back to Gojo's house. Marin offers to wash the wig since she wore it, and Gojo reads the care instructions out loud while Marin follows each step. As he goes through the list, Marin realizes it's surprisingly easy. She turns to tell him, but freezes when she sees him, and he starts seeing him in a different light, now as a man who could expand her domain better than the other Gojo ever could. Meanwhile, Miori is driving Kaoru home, playfully teasing him about how he passed out. She jokes that it's normal for teenage boys like Gojo to start using girls' stockings for their gooning materials. When Kaoru finally walks into the house, to his shock, the first thing he sees is Gojo greeting him while holding a very revealing dress, followed by Marin, and Kaoru screams, thinking someone's walls were painted white while he was gone. Later, Kaoru apologizes for yelling, and Gojo assures him that they weren't doing anything weird, and Kaoru believes him. When the old man sees the dress, he compliments Gojo for his brilliant work, and Gojo humbly admits he still has a lot to improve. As the two of them start inspecting the dress more closely, Marin watches them quietly, and that's when it hits her that she's completely fallen in love with Gojo and wants him to have her children. She starts fidgeting from how cute he looks while chatting with his grandpa, until suddenly, Her stomach betrays her with a loud grumble. Gojo asks if she's hungry, and Kaoru invites her to stay for dinner. That evening, Marin happily devours Gojo's cooking and praises him for being amazing in the kitchen. Gojo explains that he had to learn to cook since his parents passed away a long time ago, and Marin says she's in the same boat. She reveals that her mom has touched grass and down under from illness, and her dad had to move away for work, so she lives on her own. Concerned, Kaoru asks if she's eating well. Marin assures him that she is, and proves it by showing them a photo of an extremely bad plate of unhealthy food. Gojo looks mildly traumatized. While Kaoru asks if she's okay, Marin laughs and says she drinks milk and yogurt every day, but Kaoru insists she join them for meals more often, and she agrees to do so. After dinner, Gojo walks her to the station and apologizes for keeping her out late, but Marin assures him that she had a great time when they are about to split up. While blushing, Marin shyly waves him goodbye and runs off with a big smile. On the train ride home, Marin wonders why she feels so restless. She remembers when Gojo told his grandpa that they didn't do anything inappropriate, and starts to wonder what would happen if they did do something freaky. The next day, a girl dashes toward Kaoru's shop under the pouring rain to take shelter. When Kaoru sees her soaked outside, he assumes she must be one of Gojo's friends and invites her in. Later, Gojo gets home from school, and Kaoru tells him he's heading out and that a friend is waiting for him. Gojo's confused, as he only has one friend, and Marin is at work. He panics, thinking this could be a break-in, and rushes to check. When he opens the bathroom door, he finds a stranger without her plot armor. She slips on some water and falls, accidentally showing him what men go to war for. The sight reminds Gojo of when he once asked his grandpa why his Hina dolls didn't have hair, and Kaoru explained that the heads are made separately, which is why the dolls were as smooth as this mystery girl. After calming down, Gojo apologizes to the cardboard melon stranger and asks what she's doing there. She wants to know if he's the one who makes the costumes, and Gojo assumes she's talking about the Hina dolls' costumes. Gojo grabs a notebook and asks for her name and school. She introduces herself as Sajina, and Gojo is shocked to learn she's actually older than him. He says she can check out some costumes right away, and that excites Sajina. But when Gojo takes her into the Hina doll display room, Sajina is confused about what kind of BS Gojo is taking her to see. After looking around a bit more, she admits the clothes on the dolls are nice, but asks why he's showing her this. Gojo reminds her it's a Hina doll shop, but Sajina pulls out a photo of Marin and says she wants a cosplay outfit like that. Gojo says he doesn't take orders, but Sajina pulls out her secret weapon and threatens to report him to the feds for seeing her undressed unless he agrees to help. Suddenly, it clicks inside his head. Gojo realizes this is the same cosplayer Marin mentioned, the one who never goes to events. Gojo asks how she found his house, and Sajina explains that she saw Marin's cosplay post, stalked them around at the cosplay event, and tracked Gojo back to his home. Gojo quickly texts Marin about his guest, and she shows up moments later, fangirling over her cosplay idol hard. Marin bombards Sajina with compliments and questions, which terrifies Sajina, and when Gojo informs Marin that Sajina is a fan of her cosplay, Marin ascends into the ultimate happiness and throws even more compliments at Sajina. After calming down, Sajina asks Gojo to make her a Shin, the magical girl costume. Marin lights up and starts explaining all about the character and the anime she's from. Sajina is surprised, as she didn't expect Marin to know her stuff and initially thought Marin was only a hoe who wore cosplay for her OnlyFans audience. Gojo mentions that Marin loves Shin so much. She has her merch all over her bag. Sajina asks why Marin doesn't cosplay her, and Marin explains that her plots are too thick to pull off Shin's innocent look, and she'd never want to ruin a character she loves so much. Hearing that, Sajina realizes Marin is the kind of cosplayer she respects, and quickly apologizes in tears for judging her harshly. As Sajina gets ready to leave, she asks for Gojo's contact info, so she can send more details and her measurements. Then she casually tells Marin not to get the wrong idea, and assures her that she's not aiming for her baby daddy. Gojo immediately sets the record straight that they're not dating and flees in embarrassment. Sajina apologizes for the misunderstanding and gets confused when she sees how happy Marin is after hearing that Gojo is completely single. Marin snaps back to reality and asks Sajina if she'd like to cosplay together sometime, but Sajina quickly rejects her offer. When Gojo returns, he finds Marin excitedly trying to get Sajina to do a group cosplay with her, but Sajina says she's only into solo cosplay and already plans to rent a studio by herself. Marin pictures how cute Sajina will look in a studio and begs to come along. Sajina keeps saying no to her offers until Marin offers to split the studio fee. Gojo also offers to chip in, saying he has to be there anyway to help with Marin's makeup and eyelashes. Hearing this, Sajina realizes she could save money on the studio and use the extra cash on costumes instead, so she agrees. Marin celebrates when Sajina changed her mind, and Gojo says he'll watch the anime too to get references. Sajina asks if pictures and reference art aren't enough, but Gojo explains he likes knowing the characters personally. He adds that he had to watch Marin's X-rated game clips to get her costume right. When Gojo searches for where to watch the show, Marin offers to lend him her full DVD box set. Gojo's relieved to hear her offer until she tells him that it has over 100 episodes. The next day, Gojo tells his grandpa that he's going to Marin's place. Kaoru says not to worry about the shop, and then checks out the Hina doll head Gojo has painted. Worried, Gojo's unsure if it looks good since he hasn't practiced lately. But to his surprise, Kaoru says it's clear that he's improved skill-wise. He points out that Gojo's lines used to be stiff, but now they've softened. He guesses that hanging out with Marin has been good for him, especially since he's even done her makeup, and Kaoru advises him not to focus only on dolls if he wants to be a true craftsman. Later, Gojo gets to Marin's apartment and rings the bell a few times, wondering if he came too early. Suddenly, Marin opens the door in her pajamas, rushing to explain she overslept. Gojo, however, is too stunned by her melons to hear anything else, and remembers the 7 inches between her 2 pepperonis she once measured. When Marin sees the look on his face, she glances in the mirror, realizes that she's not wearing contacts, and closes the door to put in her contacts. After fixing her look, she lets Gojo in, and he hands her a bag of pudding. She's so distracted about Gojo seeing her without contacts that she doesn't even notice he's still frozen at the entrance. Because Gojo has never been to a friend's house before, especially not a girl's, he starts to get dizzy from his nerves. He thinks about just grabbing the DVDs and leaving, but Marin returns and suggests they watch a few episodes together. Gojo agrees, and she leads him to her room, which is so over the top with everything Shiozku that it helps calm his nerves. They sit down to watch, and Gojo takes notes on the details of the characters. Marin gets comfy and starts fangirling over her favorite ones. Then suddenly, it hits her that this feels like a home date. She realizes that without Kaoru around, it's just the two of them. She sneaks a glance at Gojo, sees that sweet, clueless look she loves, and realizes she's completely in love. She tries to stay calm but can't help melting inside. As she's stuck in her daydream, her stomach growls loudly. Gojo offers to go out and grab food, but Marin says she'll cook instead. Gojo gets excited to taste her cooking, but when he remembers how unhealthy her food is, he worries for his arteries. He offers to cook, but Marin insists on doing it this time. She quickly changes into an apron, then remembers she forgot her bra, but shrugs it off, hoping Gojo didn't notice, which he clearly does. She checks the fridge and decides to make omelet, excited to cook something cute and homemade. She chops up some onions, fries the rice, and is surprised it tastes great. But when she plates it up, it looks like something that gets people called an idiot sandwich. Embarrassed, she tells Gojo not to eat it, but he tries it and says it's really good. Marin asks if he's just being polite, but Gojo insists he's telling the truth, and that cheers her up. After lunch, they keep watching the anime. At one point, Gojo gets so emotional that he starts crying, so Marin passes him some tissues with a smile. Later, when Gojo gets home, he talks to Sajina about the outfit design. She's impressed by how much detail he included. She offers to send money for materials, but decides to wait until Gojo knows the exact cost. When he asks if she wants help with makeup or hair, Sajina says she'll handle it herself. Curious, Gojo asks how she changes the width of her eyelids in photos. To answer his question, Sajina switches to video chat and demonstrates by holding it up with a strip of tape. She explains how she uses it to adjust her eye shape, and Gojo realizes they could have used that technique on Marin as well. Sajina asks if he didn't already know, and Gojo explains it was his first cosplay project, which shocks her to know that the dress was his first costume attempt. She figures that's why the photos were taken on a phone, and offers him to use her high-grade camera next time. She says her younger sister, Shinju, takes all her cosplay photos and suggests that Gojo and Marin buy a camera too. Gojo asks if Shinju can teach him how to use one, and Sajina suggests they meet at a family restaurant near her house. Gojo agrees and thanks her before ending the call and immediately texts Marin about the meetup plans. Marin calls him right back, insisting on coming too, so she can learn. She starts imagining how cute Sajina's little sister must be, but when they arrive at the restaurant, they see a tall and thick girl next to Sajina. Gojo is stunned by her size and can't believe someone so young has such massive plots. Then, Marin scrolls through the photos Shinju just took and can't help but praise how amazing they look. Sajina chimes in, saying it's all thanks to Shinju, who not only takes her pictures but also came up with her cosplay name and made her account. Shinju explains she just wanted the world to see how adorable her sister is, so she created the account, and to her surprise, it blew up. But when random people started messaging her, she didn't know how to respond, so she just ignored everyone. Sajina says she doesn't care what strangers think. But Shinju admits that having so many followers makes her really happy. Marin smiles and says it's obvious how much Shinju loves her sister. And when Shinju expresses her agreement, Sajina blushes and tries to hide her face. Shinju then brings out their father's camera and mentions that photography is his hobby. Gojo asks what makes it better than a smartphone, and Shinju explains to him that a camera gives sharper pictures and more control over lighting and background, seeing how passionate Shinju is about it. Marin asks if she's ever thought about cosplaying too. Shinju freezes for a moment at Marin's question, but when Sajina repeats the question, she answers that she just enjoys taking pictures of her sister. Later, Marin tests out the camera and, after seeing how clear the photos look, decides she wants to buy one. Gojo searches for the prices online and nearly faints when he sees how cameras cost as much as a full weekend with your creamy sister. Sajina tells them it's even pricier with accessories, and Gojo instantly loses hope. He wonders how people at cosplay events afford this stuff, and Marin jokes that they'll stick to phones until she can save enough money. Sajina reminds them to be realistic and buy only what they can afford. After that, Sajina invites them to check out some studio options, and she suggests meeting at the train station that weekend. When the weekend arrives, they end up at an abandoned hospital that's been turned into a studio. Marin and Shinju are thrilled and dash inside, while Sajina, feeling scared, questions why she agreed to this in the first place. At the front, Gojo comments that the gloomy building is a great match for scenes from the anime, and Sajina agrees but is also kind of shocked that Gojo actually watched the entire show. When Marin and Shinju call out to them from inside, Gojo walks in but notices Sajina frozen at the door. He asks if she's scared or uncomfortable, but she brushes it off and walks in with purpose. Upstairs, Marin wonders if it's too dark in the hallway, but Shinju says the flash will take care of it. She then starts talking about camera settings, and Marin excitedly joins in. They notice clouds gathering outside and suggest they wrap up soon. As the rain begins, Gojo finds Sajina cooped up in a corner and asks if she wants to wait at the entrance, suspecting that she's scared. Sajina insists she's fine and says she wants to push through for her cosplay. Gojo is puzzled and asks why she's forcing herself so much, and instead of answering, Sajina responds by asking if he has any dreams. Gojo says he wants to be a Hina doll craftsman, and Sajina encourages him to make it happen, then quietly shares that she once dreamed of becoming a magical girl. She explains that she was obsessed with the idea of becoming a magical girl years ago, but eventually realized that they weren't real. However, when she found out that she could buy their costumes, she bought them. And while her first cosplay was a disaster, it still made her happy. From that moment on, she decided to chase the dream in her own way. Gojo asks why she chose him to make such an important costume, and Sajina admits she felt jealous after seeing Marin's photos in his creation. She adds that something about the outfit just hit her, and it was like love at first sight. That reminds Gojo of the first time he saw his grandpa's Hina dolls. He once expressed that they were the most beautiful things he'd ever seen, but Kaoru had told him they were meant to grab attention. When Gojo asked what that meant, Kaoru explained that dolls should make people feel love at first sight, and that moment inspired Gojo to follow in his grandfather's footsteps. Back in the present, Gojo starts crying, overwhelmed by the memory and Sajina's words. She panics a little, but Gojo grabs her hand and thanks her for the motivation, promising to do his best. However, because Sajina goes to an all-girls school, the hand-holding is too much for her, and she faints right there. A few days later, after the final exams wrap up, Marin suggests to Gojo that they go to the beach together. Gojo is surprised by the request, but finds himself standing on the sand not long after. He asks her if this is for a photoshoot, but Marin tells him no, and that it's just summer, they're free, and it's time for them to have fun. Gojo remembers how spontaneous Marin is and figures this is just another one of those moments. While eating her burger, Marin asks Gojo to feed her some fries, But before he can even grab them, a bird swoops in and steals her burger. They try moving to another spot, but the bird keeps following. Thinking fast, Gojo yeets the fries in the opposite direction to distract the bird, and they make a break for it, holding on to the last burger like it's their precious treasure. They eventually sit down to rest and share Gojo's burger. Marin offers him a sip of her bubble tea, but he turns it down, not wanting an indirect kiss. After a while, she decides to cool off and runs into the water to soak her feet, but when doing so, she accidentally shows Gojo her plot cover. Then she calls for him to join her. So he awkwardly removes his shoes, rolls up his pants, and steps into the ocean. He freaks out when his feet start sinking into the wet sand, and Marin laughs, asking him if it's his first time. Gojo admits that it is his first time, and explains that he spent so much time working with Hina dolls before that he never got to try stuff like this. But now that he's here, he understands why his grandpa wanted him to explore the world more. He then says that the scenery is beautiful, and Marin, totally charmed by his pure honesty, promises to take him to even more places for summer break. Just the two of them. When Gojo agrees, flustered, Marin says she'll grab a drink and runs off. As she walks away, she starts to freak out, hearing that Gojo agrees to more alone time with her, and she can't wait for summer break to come. Just then, she looks back at Gojo and sees him watching the waves with full aura, looking completely in awe. It moves her heart seeing him like this, and she takes a picture of him, thinking how hot he is. But suddenly, Gojo trips over nothing and falls face first into the ocean. A few days later, Marin and Gojo go up to his room to look through some new costume materials they just bought. Out of nowhere, Marin lifts her skirt, making Gojo flinch at her underwear, but she casually informs him that she's wearing a swimsuit. She reminds him about the night before when she sent him a picture wearing one and never got a reply, but Gojo refuses to reveal the reason, as the night before, he used those pictures for some creamy business. As Marin keeps showing off her swimsuit, Gojo asks for a minute to himself. Marin realizes what's happening and teases him about getting worked up. But Gojo snaps and tells her not to touch him unless she wants a second Shibuya incident. After they settle down, Marin helps Gojo paint a black jewel for her next costume, and she says she's happy she can finally be useful. It reminds Gojo of the first time someone made him feel that way. Then, Marin gets excited to try on her costume and starts undressing right there. Gojo instantly covers his eyes like he's under attack, but Marin suddenly realizes she's wearing the wrong melon cover and gets embarrassed, quickly covering up again. Later, Sagina tries on her own costume, and is impressed with how well Gojo made it. Gojo asks if anything needs fixing, and Sagina says the skirt could be puffier, but she'll just wear a tutu. She then puts on the cape and admires the detailed lining Gojo added. He warns her it's a thick material, but she says that's great for pictures. Marin, watching all this, wishes she knew more about costume design. She tries to give Gojo some professional feedback, but all she can manage are sounding like a complete noob in costume designs. Gojo offers to help with Marin's makeup and wig, and Sagina gives some tips so that the look better matches the character they're cosplaying. Gojo even pulls out some tape and shows how to tweak eyelids for cosplay. Marin gets excited to try it, and Sagina helps Gojo adjust the tape properly. When Marin looks in the mirror, she's shocked by the change and starts happily smacking Gojo like a kid full of joy, as she can't wait for the photoshoot. But then, it starts pouring outside, and Marin's mood drops. However, Sagina says that the gloomy weather actually fits the vibe of the characters better. She also compliments Marin's costume, and Marin gushes about how much she loves both their characters. She asks to take a photo together, and unlike before, this time, Sagina says yes. Marin is thrilled and posts it on her account. They suddenly realize that Shinju and Gojo are taking forever, but when the door finally opens, Marin and Sagina are stunned. It turns out that after Sagina fainted the day before, they ended the visit early and returned to the station. Gojo apologized for not realizing something was off, but Sagina told him she was fine. Marin says she has plans and bolts, leaving Gojo behind with the sisters. Shinju mentions she wants to check out some shops at the station, so Sagina leaves them alone. Gojo asks Shinju if she's ever secretly wanted to cosplay too, and that maybe she just couldn't say so in front of her sister. Shinju looks down, so Gojo apologizes and starts to walk away, but she stops him and says there is a character she'd like to try. She explains that, unlike her sister, who's petite and cute, she worries that her plump figure will make her look strange trying to pull off her favorite character, and that it might bother Sagina. Gojo shares his experience from the cosplay event, telling her that the best thing about cosplay is that anyone can become whoever they want. He encourages her to try, promising that her sister would never judge her. Shinju thanks him and says she wants to dress up as a character from the same anime as Marin and Sagina. Gojo starts picturing a cute red-haired character, but is surprised when she says it's actually a male character called Sama. He listens without judgment, and they decide Shinju will secretly join the shoot. Shinju says that her one issue is her humongous melons, which make dressing up tricky, and that she only gets a small allowance. Gojo realizes cosplay can get expensive, but he's determined to help. They go back to his house, and Gojo pulls out his school uniform, which happens to look like the one from the anime. Shinju asks to try it on, so Gojo waits outside, while his mind wanders, imagining what it would be like if Marin wore his clothes instead. When he returns, the buttons on his shirt are barely holding on to the precious twins, and one even pops off and flies past his head. Afterward, Gojo helps fix the shirt and thinks about how Hina dolls don't deal with this, but they also just wear kimonos. Just then, he gets an idea to wrap her plots to flatten them, and suggests trying it out. As she changes again, Gojo remembers how Marin doubled up on bras to enhance her assets and reflects on how committed these girls are to their roles. When he re-enters, Shinju says it's not working as her assets won't cooperate. Gojo also notices that her body type is more feminine than the character's lean build. He turns to the internet for help and finds a suggestion to use a bee holder. They look it up and are shocked to see the size she needs and how cheap it is. With the melon issue solved, Gojo takes her measurements, starting with the head, but her assets keep getting in the way, making the process awkward for him. A few days later, Gojo and Shinju meet again to cut her wig, and Shinju is impressed by how calm he is. Gojo admits he's actually scared of messing up, and she's relieved to hear that, as she always thought that she was the only one nervous. Gojo shares how there's someone in his class he really looks up to, and even though she seems perfect, there are still things she struggles with. He calls that person adorable, but quickly gets flustered and returns to the point, saying that everyone has things they're working through, even if they look confident. Shinju quietly takes that in, and then they continue with the wig and makeup, slowly transforming her into the character. Back in the photoshoot session, Marin and Sajina finally see her, and they can't stop ogling at how great she looks. Shinju is beaming with happiness as her sister praises her, and after some more gushing, the girls decide to take a group photo, officially marking Shinju's first step into the cosplay world. After that, Shinju grabs her camera and starts snapping photos of the girls non-stop. She even asks them to try a popular pose from the anime. But Sajina is more focused on how creepy the old building feels. But that changes fast when she sees Marin fully in character, thinking it's almost scary how accurate she is. The mood shifts when Marin breaks character and blushes, calling Sajina cute up close. Marin laughs, totally enjoying herself. And while Sajina knows she's not being very professional, she can't stop herself from getting flustered as well. After the shoot, Sajina quietly pulls Gojo aside to thank him for helping Shinju. She's pretty sure he paid for some of her sister's cosplay costs and promises to pay him back. She also admits she feels bad for not noticing Shinju wanted to cosplay, and it makes Sajina feel like she failed as a big sister. But Gojo gently tells her that talking about what you really love can be hard sometimes, and hearing that, Sajina realizes how kind Gojo really is. But she keeps those feelings to herself. Meanwhile, Marin's in full photoshoot mode, posing as her new character. Shinju gets excited after capturing the perfect shot. But right in the middle of it all, Marin's bee holder gives out and loses against her massive assets. Later on, Sajina and Shinju go through the photos and are amazed by how well Marin pulled off the look. Sajina stares at the pictures too and starts realizing her feelings might not just be about the outfit Gojo made. Shinju notices Sajina staring and asks if her cosplay came out weird. Sajina shakes her head and explains that she's actually jealous that Shinju got to dress as a character she herself could never pull off. It shocks Shinju to hear that, and she assures Sajina that she looks great in all her cosplays. But Sajina explains that she only picks characters she knows she can do justice to. While she doesn't dislike how she looks, sometimes she wonders what it would be like to try something different. That reminds Shinju of what Gojo once said, that everyone has their own struggles. So Shinju tells Sajina that she plans to get a job when she's older and save up to cosplay even more. Sajina gets excited to hear that from her sister and says she's looking forward to it. She even admits she prefers doing shoots with just her little sister. Shinju says the group cosplay was fun too, and Sajina looks at a picture with Gojo in the corner and quietly says that it was indeed fun. Back at home, Gojo's looking through the photos when Marin calls to express her happiness about them. She praises Gojo for how good the makeup turned out and asks if Shinju was wearing his uniform. When he says yes and explains they worked on it together, Marin suddenly realizes he was alone in his room with a girl who has way thicker plots than hers. Suddenly, Marin's voice goes quiet, while her soul feels a tremendous amount of jealousy. Some time later, summer break kicks off. Gojo is excited to finally work on both his dolls and Marin's next cosplay. This time, she picked a character named Veronica, a tan baddie who looks like she bites. They'd watched the anime together. And while Mary was ogling over Veronica's creamy caramel look, Gojo was wondering how to recreate her darker skin tone. Now, in the present, Gojo finishes the costume quickly since the design is simple. Just then, Marin shows up at his door, several shades darker after doing a reverse Michael Jackson. When Gojo asks what happened, she explains that she covered her head to toe in body foundation. She then asks to shower, so Gojo waits outside, holding out some of his clothes for her to change into afterward. When Marin comes out, she feels way better after cooling down. Gojo, meanwhile, is freaking out seeing that she's literally wearing his clothes and even smells like his soap. Then, Marin shows him her cosplay makeup, which looked like something your mom wore when she was getting her domain expanded. Gojo sees something peeking out of her bag, and Marin pulls out a stick on the wall wallpaper for changing backgrounds. However, she still hasn't found the fake fangs for the cosplay, and Gojo gives her some fake teeth he made using press-on nails. Marin tries them on and shows them off, and he's amazed at how real they look. Suddenly, Marin lifts her shirt to apply the foundation on her body, and Gojo gets a front row seat to things he was never meant to see. Marin notices his face turning red and worries he's overheating. She rushes to get water, slips, and hits her head, putting a stop to cosplay plans for the day. A few days later, Marin takes Gojo shopping with her. But instead of buying things for herself, this time, she wants to buy him some new clothes. She asks what style he likes, but he doesn't have an answer. Marin picks out a shirt and sends him to try it on. A store worker sees Marin waiting and assumes her boyfriend must be hot. But when he sees plain old Gojo step out, he hopes the guy can satisfy her in other ways than his looks. Marin keeps handing Gojo shirt after shirt, falling for every single one, thinking that he looks hot in every one of them, even though Gojo hates them all. Eventually, she picks out a simple t-shirt for herself and plans to try it on too, hoping they can match as a couple. She looks amazing in it, but Gojo still doesn't like it. Afterward, they grab ramen and keep shopping. In the end, Gojo doesn't buy anything, but Marin doesn't mind at all. She brings up doing the Veronica cosplay now that she's healed, but Gojo says she should do it on her own without him being involved. It takes Marin by surprise to hear that, and Marin asks why, thinking that Gojo doesn't want to be around her anymore. But suddenly, Gojo blurts out that he wouldn't survive seeing her in that outfit without painting his pants white. Marin finally gets it and punches Gojo for scaring her, as she thought something was seriously wrong. She promises to be more careful picking her next character and says she'll wear the Veronica costume at home, just so Gojo's hard work doesn't go to waste. They both continue walking, blushing at their earlier interaction. Then Marin suddenly pulls him close and asks if he'd like her to send some pictures of her in the outfit. Gojo folds hard on the spot, but Marin giggles and says she's just kidding. Afterward, Marin suggests they cool off somewhere since the heat is unbearable. So she and Gojo head to a manga cafe. As Marin happily talks about how convenient these places are, Gojo can't stop thinking about how small the room is and how close they're sitting. He asks if this is normal for manga cafes, and Marin casually says yes. She grabs a food menu, and when he sees the food option, it amazes Gojo with how unhealthy the food is. Then, Marin pulls out a manga about a succubus who's obsessed with the main character. She explains she loves characters with pigtails and would love to cosplay this one someday. Gojo notes that this character actually wears more clothes than Veronica, but Marin surprises him by saying she probably won't cosplay her. When Gojo asks why, she admits she doesn't think she's cute enough to pull off the pigtails. Gojo is stunned to hear Marin saying that and encourages her to try it anyway, especially since she likes the character so much. While flustered, Marin agrees to cosplay the succubus, mainly because Gojo asked her to. Gojo then asks what a succubus is, and Marin chillfully explains they're mythical demons who visit people in their dreams and drain their energy by creaming them dry. He's concerned after hearing that, but she assures him it's not scary. She shows him a scene from the manga where the succubus just wants the guy to fall asleep so she can hang out with him, but ends up falling asleep herself. And the goofy tone of the story helps calm Gojo's nerves, making him realize it's a chill manga. Then, Marin goes to pick up the snacks she ordered, leaving Gojo to flip through the manga, but he quickly realizes while reading that the art is so simplified that he can't make out the full design of the outfit. And even though he's made costumes from incomplete references before, he admits that this one's really tricky. Afterward, Gojo says he wants to stop by the bookstore to find a better reference for the character. Later, he shows Kaoru his new purchase and feels proud of the progress he's making in both fashion and confidence. A few days later, Gojo finishes the costume, and Marin texts him, saying that she has booked a nearby studio for them to cosplay in. They meet outside, and though the place looks a bit off, Marin rushes in without hesitation. When they get to the room, Marin excitedly jumps around until she notices a suspicious, pickle-shaped massager. and that's when Gojo realizes that they're in a love hotel. Gojo asks why she didn't mention this earlier, and Marin sheepishly admits she saw a room with a big bed online that looked just like one from the manga, and it was so cheap she didn't think twice before booking, and she only realized what kind of place it was once they got there. Trying to stay calm, Gojo tells himself it's just a photo studio. But when he sees the massager, he can't help but think about all the possibilities that end with him expanding Marin's creamy domain. Marin reassures him by showing pictures of other cosplayers doing harmless shoots in similar places. When Gojo sees that they even serve desserts, he asks if this hotel has any. Marin tries to call room service, but Gojo stops her, pointing out that this really isn't a place for them to fool around in. Marin agrees it was a silly idea, but says she'll go change into her cosplay outfit since they're already here. Gojo waits nervously outside and turns on the TV, only to be startled by Johnny Sins clapping on screen, and he initially switches it off so he can learn some tips and tricks from the Bald King himself. When Marin walks out in costume, he's amazed by how well the outfit turned out. She compliments the little details he added. Gojo explains he researched succubi to get inspiration, and while the design may not be completely accurate, he had fun creating his own version. Marin assures him that what makes cosplay fun is putting their own twist on it. Then, she randomly brings up an odd superstition about how keeping pickle protectors in their wallet is supposed to bring good luck. Gojo gets flustered, but Marin finds some in the room and jokes about sharing the luck. Then, Gojo does Marin's makeup and wig, and when she looks in the mirror, he compliments how much she resembles the character. They start the photoshoot with Marin posing on the bed and eating chocolates to match scenes from the manga, but Marin ends up eating all the chocolate. Then, they try to recreate the scene where the character sings a lullaby. But seeing that it looks half-cooked, Gojo says it would look better from the guy's perspective. So he lies on the bed and asks Marin to get on top of him for the shot. Marin worries that her fat cheeks might squish him, but Gojo says he'll be fine. As she climbs over him, Gojo manages to take the perfect photo. Marin is thrilled with the result, but just then, they hear loud happy noises from a girl getting clapped next door and are reminded of where they actually are. Embarrassed, Gojo quickly pulls away, all the while his rocket to fly up her cave, but they both end up tangled and face to face in the dark. But just as they are about to progress the plot, the phone rings, informing them that they've run out of time. Marin goes to get changed, overwhelmed by how close they are to bumping bellies. Afterward, they ride the elevator down, where a girl walks past them and reflects on how she was once in their position. Once Gojo gets home, he can't help but tickle his pickle to Marin after the experience he just had. Some night later, Gojo's phone buzzes with an urgent text from Marin, begging him for help, saying it is an emergency. At her apartment, he finds her slumped over her desk, surrounded by textbooks. She reveals that, as punishment, her dad just canceled their summer festival plan after finding out that she still has a mountain of homework. Marin expresses how much she wants to watch the fireworks, but Gojo reminds her she was buried in assignments anyway. Marin vents that she accepted so many modeling jobs that she totally forgot about school. Gojo asks what kind of job keeps her this busy, and when Marin hands him a glossy fashion magazine, Gojo sees her face is on the cover and is shocked to know that she's famous. But she laughs and says she isn't famous and she's only an amateur model. She reveals that a salon stylist put her in touch with an editor, and now she takes part-time shoots to save for a high-end camera. Gojo hardly recognizes her in professional makeup, and Marin grins, explaining that a real artist did her face that day. To relax, Marin suggests a horror movie. Gojo isn't sure, as scary films aren't his thing, but she insists it can't be that bad. 5 minutes into the film, she's glued to his arm, trembling, while Gojo is unfazed and studies the monster's costume details. When the credits roll, Gojo rewinds the film to inspect the makeup, which scares Marin, and she turns her face away to avoid watching it. After finishing most of her homework, Marin celebrates and is relieved that there's no math. But to her shock, Gojo reminds her about the worksheet drills, and she realizes that she left hers at school. They go to the campus, and after they get Marin's homework, on the walk home, Gojo invites Marin over for dinner. She cheers, happy for a break from frozen fried rice. Along the way, they pass the school pool. Marin kneels to peek at the water, and while Gojo warns her to be careful, she slips and falls in anyway. Gojo realizes that she can't swim, so Gojo acts fast and saves he, which ends with them both soaked. He asks how she handles beach trips with friends, and Marin shrugs, saying that she just eats, chats, and watches sunlight sparkle on the sea instead of swimming. She wonders if it's weird to love the ocean when she can't swim, but Gojo says he gets it, as it's just like how he loves Hina dolls, even though he can't craft them perfectly yet. Inspired, Marin proposes finding another festival that's still open tonight. Gojo reminds her of her homework, and she promises to finish it if he helps, so they can visit the festival. When evening falls, Gojo tells Kaoru he's heading to the festival, and Kaoru smiles, realizing that his grandson has finally made friends. When he arrives, the festival is packed, and Gojo worries he'll never find Marin, but she appears twirling in her beautiful yukata. He stares at her look, hypnotized, and Marin teases him, accusing him of being a passionate neck kisser. To her surprise, Gojo doesn't retort, but his reactions confirm it, and seeing him blush, Marin decides that the yukata was the right call and purposefully keeps her collar temptingly low so Gojo can see. Then, before they watch the fireworks, they wander through food stalls. Marin initially hunts only for a candied apple, but ends up stopping at every stand, and gets themselves a lot of food. Suddenly, an announcement says fireworks start soon, so they move to the plaza, and Gojo confesses to Marin that this will be the first time he watches fireworks at the festival. Then, the fireworks show starts, and for the first time in his life, Gojo sees bursts of color in the sky, thinking how pretty it is, but when he sees Marin beside him, he realizes that he's seeing a sight even more beautiful. Marin catches him staring, and suddenly sticks out her blue tongue she got from Candy, and they laugh together. Afterward, Marin's sandals caused painful scratches on her feet. Gojo offers to buy bandages, but she says it's simpler if he carries her. Then, he lifts her piggyback, and while Marin is more than happy, Gojo struggles to focus with the melons on his back. On their way home, they talk about favorite festival moments, and because of the lackluster ending to the day, Marin promises to come again with him next year. Gojo smiles, realizing that she still wants to be with him. Back home, Gojo readies for bed when his phone rings. Marin is whispering, saying that she's terrified after she watched the sequel to the horror movie, and now every creak in her apartment sounds like a ghost. She begs him to keep talking until she falls asleep. Gojo agrees, lying down on his bed with the phone on speaker. Marin chatters about all the summer adventures they squeezed in, from the beach to the cosplay shoots. His replies grow softer until he dozes off, and hearing his steady breathing, Marin smiles in the dark. Feeling a deep connection, Marin whispers to Gojo, telling him that she loves him. While the call is still ongoing, she curls under her blanket and drifts to sleep like she's lying right next to him, the man that she loves.
Days later, at school, Gojo sat watching an anime Marin recommended because she wanted to cosplay as one of the characters. The girl was a boss babe, but she was also a klutz like Marin, which was probably why she liked her so much. Marin excitedly described how she wanted her outfit to look, and when Gojo asked whether she always liked bunny girls, she told him everyone did. She said this in the creepiest way possible, so bro imagined himself surrounded by bunny girl-loving freaks. As she continued talking about bunny suits, Gojo suddenly started thinking about his Hina dolls and nodded, like a confused lizard. Suddenly, Marin suggested that they book a studio to take the photos, and Gojo immediately froze. His mind returned to the day Marin embodied a succubus and almost made him unpack his sausage. Marin immediately assured him that they wouldn't go to any shady room because her photographer friend Suzuka had recommended a good studio to her. She showed him the President Luna cosplay one of Suzuka's friends did and explained that the photo had been taken at the studio Suzuka recommended. Impressed by how authentic the cosplay looked, Gojo agreed to let her book the studio. They then fell back into a comfortable silence, but Nawa interrupted it when she came looking for Marin. The shortstop was frustrated with Marin for missing their Halloween planning meeting, so Marin apologized. After Nawa calmed down, Marin said goodbye to Gojo and ran ahead, while Nawa lingered to observe him. That weekend, Marin sat on the train rereading Gojo's text because she couldn't believe he'd invited her over. Usually, she was the one who reached out to him first, but now that he'd played the Uno reverse card on her, she was freaking out. However, when she arrived and saw him in a depressed state, she realized she'd overreacted. Gojo had asked her to come over because he couldn't get the bodysuit of her outfit to stay up. When bro's brain started overheating from overuse, Marin told him to calm down and suggested using transparent straps for the bodysuit. Gojo pointed out that doing that would make the outfit look weird, but she told him they would clip it the same way stylists did during dress fittings. Gojo didn't like this idea, but he grudgingly agreed to give it a shot. A little while later, Gojo arrived at the craft store and showed the manager the outline for his design. The old man immediately assumed the outfit was for Gojo, but decided not to judge. Just then, Marin showed up and he realized the outfit was for her, so he apologized to Gojo for mistaking him for an upcoming drag queen. As they walked to get the clear straps, the man told them that there was another way to secure the bunny suit. With Gojo's permission, he drew on the designs, explaining that if he made it into a corset, it would stay. Marin asked if he was sure about what he was saying, and when he confirmed it, she looked disappointed, almost as if she were hoping for a chance to flash Gojo her melons. Gojo, on the other hand, was disappointed in himself for not considering that option in the first place, but the manager told him not to be. He said it was common for people to get worked up and not see what was right in front of them. Later, Gojo and Marin returned to his place, and Gojo immediately fixed the outfit. He then gave her some privacy to try it on, but Marin called out to him, saying there was another problem. Without thinking, Gojo barged into the room and froze when he saw Marin's plot covers sticking out. When he eventually regained his senses, he ran out of the room and slammed the door shut, refusing to open it no matter how hard she banged on the door. The next day, they went to the studio Suzuka recommended, and before going to get changed, Marin told Gojo he could relax because she'd fixed the issue with the plot covers. However, when she came out wearing a black garter belt, Gojo went numb. He knew he couldn't concentrate while she stood there looking like a snack, so he pointed it out. Marin explained that aside from the garter, she had skin-colored thighs on, but that did nothing to stop his inappropriate thoughts. Bro's hands even shook as he snapped her photos, and when Marin unintentionally shook what her mama gave her, he called for a timeout. Unaware of the struggle in his pants, Marin began talking about another type of stockings she wished to get and started showing him the pictures. All that did was increase his suffering, but Gojo endured the sweet torture like a real man. She then told him that she would wear the new stockings for Halloween and invited him to join her and her friends for their Halloween party. When Halloween came, Gojo was the designated photographer for the group. After they got to the karaoke club, Noah began singing while everyone else sat around the table discussing. When the girls mentioned that Gojo made Marin's outfit and did her makeup, Morita asked how he learned to do makeup as a guy. The question reminded Gojo of his childhood friend calling him a freak, so he panicked. Fortunately, Shiki, the other guy with them, said it was normal for guys to be makeup artists and reminded Morita that his elder brother was one. Marin then added that Gojo's family made Hina dolls, and the idiot Morita began talking about how Hina dolls were the most amazing things he'd ever seen. Everyone then began adding their 2 cents, and Gojo wondered why they weren't calling him names or looking at him weirdly, like his childhood friend had. As he began to realize that they wouldn't judge him, Nawa suddenly asked if he was dating Marin. Gojo almost choked on his soda after hearing what Nawa said, so everyone asked if he was doing okay. Once they confirmed that he was doing okay, they admitted that they all believed he and Marin were dating. Shiki even mentioned that someone had spotted them together at the summer festival. Marin didn't deny attending the festival together, prompting Morita to complain that he wasn't invited. Nawa did the same and demanded to know, once and for all, whether they were dating, so Gojo hurriedly denied it. The next moment, Karen and Sira, 2 more of their friends, opened the door, so Marin immediately pulled Gojo to the bathroom. While he wiped off the stain on his shirt, Marin sat outside, wiping the stain off the head of his rabbit costume. She also couldn't help but wonder why he had denied their relationship the way he did, even though it was the right thing. As she continued sulking, 2 potential leg shakers, Manabu and Hikaru, approached her and asked if they could speak with her. When Gojo came out and spotted Marin talking to the guys, he immediately assumed they were hitting on her. So he intervened and told the blonde guy that he would take Marin's place, since he was better at taking orders anyway. Manabu was the one who figured out what was going on, and when he pointed it out to Hikaru, the guy was appalled. It turned out that they were Marin's stylists, and when they saw her, Hikaru couldn't resist scolding her for the way her hair looked. Upon hearing this, Gojo felt embarrassed, and his embarrassment didn't disappear even after the boys left. And while he was sulking, it dawned on Marin that he'd been trying to protect her. Moved by this, she kissed his cheek, causing him to raise his head immediately. Before Gojo could recover from the shock, he asked if she was angry with him because he'd heard her click her tongue. Realizing that he was referring to her kissing his costume, Marin got up and walked away, too embarrassed to admit what she'd done. However, Gojo followed her because he believed that she was angry. The next day at school, Marin was absent with a cold, so Gojo texted her to ask how she was doing. Marin didn't respond to the message, so Bro spent the following 3 periods staring at his phone. Later that day, he showed up at Marin's place with groceries and medicine, and the sick girl was surprised to see him. He admitted that he'd been so worried about her that he faked being sick so he could leave school and check up on her. Before Marin could respond, she collapsed, so he picked her up and took her back inside. He first stopped in the bathroom to look for clean clothes she could change into. Once that was taken care of, he prepared some food for her and fed it to her when it was ready. As she ate, Marin suddenly started crying, which worried Gojo, but when she began thanking him, he realized she was just in her feelings. Eventually, she finished eating and took the medicine, so he tried to stand up and take the plates to the kitchen, but Marin stopped him. Gojo then sat back down, and she weakly asked him to stay with her after thanking him again, so he did. A few hours later, she woke up feeling better and thanked him for coming to look after her. Just as she promised to go to the hospital the next day, Nawa and the others began ringing the doorbell. Gojo panicked when he saw them through the intercom, so he grabbed his belongings and went to hide on the balcony to avoid being caught. Days later, he and Marin went on another cosplay adventure at the aquarium. While exploring the place, Marin spotted someone cosplaying a character from a popular idol game and almost lost her cool. When she realized she was acting like a creep, she apologized and asked the girl if something happened since she was in a squat position. The girl explained that she'd lost the hook for her skirt, so Marin and Gojo offered to help her find it. A little while making the offer, they found the hook, and the girl who introduced herself as Amane thanked them for helping her. Gojo and Marin also introduced themselves to her. After which, Marin asked Amane if she could take a photo with her. Amane apologized, saying she couldn't because her outfit was damaged, but Gojo told her not to worry and offered to fix the skirt. Amane tried to refuse, but the partners in crime convinced her to agree. The only problem was that Gojo couldn't use the women's bathroom because he was a guy, and when he pointed it out, Amane said she didn't mind using the men's bathroom. Shocked, Gojo refused, but Amane shocked him further by revealing that she was actually a dude. While they were in the toilet, Gojo couldn't help but stare at Amane, as he tried to figure out what in the name of catfishing was going on. Amane didn't notice his stares because he was rummaging through his bag, and when Gojo's eyes shifted to the bag, he saw that Amane had a bottle of liquid glue. For some reason, Gojo began wondering what Amane used the liquid for, and it almost made him go crazy. Meanwhile, Marin, who was waiting outside, ran into Suzuka, who was wearing a Nanami-coated outfit. After a very energetic greeting session, Suzuka complimented Marin's cosplay outfit, but then recalled how Marin had gone commando during the school festival. Curious, she asked Marin if she had anything on under her dress, and Marin informed her that she was wearing shorts. She tried to show her, but Suzuka was still traumatized and refused to look. Later, after Gojo fixed Amane's outfit, they joined Marin in the common area for a brief chat. Since Gojo was still curious about the glue, he asked Amane what he used it for, and Amane revealed that he used it to stick his hair to his face when he had to take close-up photos. He then showed them the images, and while looking through them, Gojo was shocked to find one where Amane had a huge rack. Amane told them that it was part of the costume and offered to take them to see where he'd gotten it, much to Gojo's horror and Marin's excitement. A little while later, the trio arrived at a cosplay shop, and Amane showed Gojo and Geto, sorry Marin, one of the fake melons on sale. Marin said it would be great if she had to cosplay as a big melon baddie, so Amane put it on Gojo's chest to show them how it worked. Gojo was left speechless when he saw how it looked on him, but Marin got excited and started kneading them like dough. Poor Gojo felt violated and embarrassed, so he turned away, refusing to let Marin continue her work. After getting over the excitement of fake plots, they began looking around the store, and Amane acted as their guide. When Gojo asked how he did his makeup, Amane answered as best he could and even showed them the eyeliner he used to make his eyes pop. He also showed them an orange-colored concealer, which he said he used to hide his 5 o'clock shadow. Afterwards, while Marin and Amane looked through the other cosmetics on sale, Gojo went full shopping junkie, feeling like he was in makeup heaven. When they moved to another aisle, Gojo spotted some items he didn't recognize, so Amane explained that cosplayers often use them to craft things like weapons. In the same aisle were character wigs, so Amane explained that cosplayers who didn't have an artistic bone in their body often bought ready-made items from the store. To prove his point, he pulled off the hair bow on his head, and Gojo was left in awe. Amane also told him that there was a section upstairs where one could buy outfits, and that was where he'd purchased the costume he was wearing. Later, after leaving the store, Gojo took a photo of Marin and Amane, and while they were discussing how good they looked, Marin's face tape came off. She immediately panicked and rushed to Gojo to help her fix it, and while he was doing so, 2 girls approached Amane and asked to take a photo with him. Amane agreed, but informed the girls that he was a guy and asked if they were comfortable taking a photo with him. Surprisingly, the girls became even more hyped by his revelation, and as they began gushing over how he nailed his look, Gojo offered to take their photos. Marin watched them for a while before asking to join, and soon it turned into a full-blown photo shoot with 2 others joining. About 1,000 photos later, the photo shoot wrapped up and the extras left to do their own things while Marin, Amane, and Gojo found a place to sit. As they chatted happily, Marin asked Amane what got him into cosplaying. Amane told her that it all started when his elder sister put makeup on him years ago. He'd been so shocked when he looked in the mirror because he didn't recognize himself, but his sister swore that he looked good, and he believed her. After that day, he asked her to teach him makeup, and whenever they finished, she would give him one of her outfits to wear. When he started cosplaying, his mother joined in the fun, and her encouraging words made him want to perfect his craft. Amane admitted that puberty never visited him when it ought to, and thanks to that, he was often teased by his classmates. The things they said made him grow to dislike himself, and the only time he ever appreciated his looks was when he cosplayed. The more he cosplayed, the more confident he grew, and that confidence led a girl to confess to him in college. One day, However, he invited his girl over to his place, and when she saw his cosplay clothes, she immediately assumed he was two-timing her. Amane had no choice but to come clean about his hobby, and it wasn't surprising that she was disgusted. She demanded that he get rid of his costumes, so Amane broke up with her instead because no one wanted an unsupportive partner. Gojo was shocked by Amane's story, but Marin shocked Amane by crying on his behalf. She said his ex was insensitive and swore that she would have reconstructed her face if she'd been there. Amane thanked her for her concern and assured her that he was over it. He admitted that he thought about quitting, but he didn't because he would have spent the rest of his life hating himself for giving up on what he loved. After hearing this, Marin calmed down and accepted a tissue to clean her snotty nose. Amane then admitted to Gojo that he'd been worried that he'd call him a creepy degenerate after finding out he was a guy. Gojo immediately cut him off and assured him that he would be the last person ever to judge him, so Amane apologized for the wrong assumption. He also promised never to misjudge anyone again because everyone he met that day had been accepting of him, and it made him glad that he attended the event. Later, after Marin and Amane changed, Amane bid farewell to his new friends, and they also made plans to hang out again if they ever attended the same event. Days later, Gojo had lunch with his grandfather and then left to accompany Marin for a photo shoot. While she was doing her thing, he had a little chat with the magazine's editor and learned that Marin had been showing up for more shoots lately. Gojo recalled Marin talking about wanting a new camera and figured that was why she was taking more gigs. The woman then told him that she'd asked Marin to become a full-time model for their magazine, but Marin had refused, saying she was busy with her hobbies. Since nothing she said could change Marin's mind, she hoped Gojo could talk to Marin on her behalf, as she believed she would listen to her boyfriend. Hearing that the woman thought they were a couple, Gojo immediately clarified that his relationship with Marin was business and not romantic. His words confused the woman, and she couldn't help but wonder whether Gojo was a professional escort. Hours later, the shoot was over, and the manager complimented Marin's outfit, saying she looked like a snack. Marin thanked her for the compliment and said she'd gotten all dolled up because she and Gojo had a birthday celebration to attend. She then told the woman they had to get the cake from the bakery and said goodbye to everyone. As they walked away, the woman became convinced they were a couple and that they were going to celebrate Gojo's birthday. However, the truth was that it was Marin's favorite idol's birthday, and the girl had ordered the cake to celebrate it. She even made Gojo wear a mask of the idol's face, and he watched in silence as Marin hugged and sang to the idol's body pillow. The more he observed her, the more he compared her to the Marin who was on set earlier, and he figured that she would always be the carefree girl he'd come to know. Some days later, their teacher informed their class that during the upcoming school festival, points would be awarded to each class based on the number of visitors to their class event. At the end of the festival, the class with the highest points wins. However, she said the pageant winner would have an advantage over the other classes. The students became hyped after hearing this, and Shiki nominated Marin to represent their class. Before Marin could accept or decline the nomination, their teacher added that the pageant would be a gender swap thing. This new information was music to Marin's ears because she could finally cosplay at school without anyone complaining. She immediately accepted to participate in the show, so Nawa asked who she planned to cosplay. Marin thought about it for a while and announced that she would go as Rei from the show Prez host. Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and given how the girls started talking about the show, Gojo figured it was pretty popular. One of the girls then asked Marin which of Rei's outfits she'd cosplay, and Marin said the one she wore in the bento scene, shocking everyone. Just then, their teacher addressed Marin and told her that, aside from preparing her costume, she also had to prepare to charm the audience. Marin assured her that she knew how to bring on the charm and told Gojo that it was their time to shine. Gojo was shocked that she'd said that in front of everyone, and the other students began murmuring about why fake Satoru was even mentioned. Nao was the one who answered their question, telling them that Gojo was responsible for making all of Marin's costumes, and this surprised them all. They hadn't known that the quiet loser had talents like that and urged him to work some magic on the new costume like he was Cinderella's fairy godmother. That night, Gojo watched Prezost, beginning with the bento scene, where Koyomi, the female lead, gave her bento to a guy she saw sitting on a bench before rushing off to school. Later that day, Koyomi and her friend noticed a group of students crowding around Rei, the student council president. Everyone loved Rei because she was beautiful, intelligent, and athletic, and as Koyomi stared at her, she felt herself getting drawn to Rei. Just then, Rei looked up, and when their eyes met, everything around them seemed to vanish. Unfortunately, the moment was ruined by Koyomi's friend, who told her that they had to get ready for their next class. After school that day, Koyomi was called to the students' council office and was surprised when Rei handed her bento box back. Rei explained that she was the one Koyomi had given the bento to, and revealed that she was dressed as a guy because she worked part-time at a host club. Koyomi was beyond shocked by this revelation, and from that day onwards, she became more involved in Rei's life as a host. One night, She brought Rei some food, and when Rei opened the box, she tried to compliment the food. However, Koyomi cut her off, saying that her simple meal couldn't compare to the fancy stuff that Rei's customers often got for her. Rei didn't know how to respond, and Koyomi retreated into her head, reminding herself that she wasn't special, since Rei treated everyone the same way. On the other hand, Rei didn't know how to tell Koyomi that her food reminded her of her late mother's cooking and that she enjoyed spending time with her after her stressful day. She also felt Koyomi wouldn't believe her, and that was the dilemma she had to keep facing. When the movie ended, Gojo was in tears because he felt bad for the girls who couldn't confess their true feelings. The next day at school, while he was hanging out with Marin at the top of the stairs, they talked about Ri and her charisma. Marin agreed that Rei was the best, but said that she couldn't help but admire a character named Tsumugi. The woman had stepped up to defend Koyomi when the other hosts ganged up on her to spite Rei. After fawning over Tsumugi, Marin listened to Gojo as he explained how he intended to make her costume, which was a three-piece suit. He also told her how he'd do her makeup to make her look more masculine, and Marin pointed out that they still needed to get Ri's signature rainbow rose. She suggested that they buy one from a flower shop, but Gojo told her that they were too broke to afford it. Their only option was to buy a plastic rose and spray paint it to look like the real thing. As they discussed further, Gojo shared his concern about having limited time to work on the outfit, as he still had to help their classmates with the interior design for their cafe. Seeing as they couldn't do anything about this, Marin volunteered to make the costume herself, so Gojo gave her a list of all the materials and items she needed to buy. Marin was nervous about going alone, but she put on a brave front and left, unaware that Gojo was worried too. When Gojo got to class, their classmates asked why he had returned, and he told them it was to help with the interior designs. The students immediately asked how he intended to help them and make Marin's costume at the same time. Gojo tried to assure them that he could handle both, but knew he was capping, and told him to focus on creating a masterpiece for the pageant. However, they knew he would feel bad for not helping them, so they promised to call on him whenever they needed extra hands. With that settled, Nawa asked where Marin was, and Gojo told her that she left to buy materials. Immediately, everyone panicked and asked how he could leave such an essential task to the airheaded Marin. Gojo quickly picked up his bag and rushed out, calling Marin as he ran so he could know where she was. Later, after he and Marin arrived at the store, they showed the manager the suit sketch and told him the type of material they were looking for. The old man showed them what he had, and Marin gushed that it was just what they were looking for. Despite the fabric being expensive, she agreed to pay for it and began telling Gojo how she couldn't wait to see everything come together. The next day, Gojo arrived at school bright and early to begin working on the suit. When Marin arrived later, he noticed she was yawning and asked if she hadn't gotten much sleep the previous night. Marin explained that she had woken up earlier than usual and shocked him by telling him that she'd made lunch for him. She said she knew he often bought lunch at the cafeteria, but since it's always so crowded, it would take away the time he could use to work on the outfit. Gojo didn't know whether to be grateful or horrified, because the only meals that the walk-in kitchen hazard could prepare were fried rice and fried rice. Since he didn't know which type of fried rice she'd made, he tried asking her, but Marin said she was embarrassed and told him to wait until lunchtime. The hours leading up to lunch were torturous to say the least, and once it was finally time, he returned to the sewing room looking like a man about to be executed. However, what Marin pulled out of her bag wasn't fried rice, but Spam rice balls, and when Gojo saw it, relief flowed through his body. He excitedly thanked Marin for the food, telling her that his heart had been running laps in anticipation of the lunch she made for him. Marin misinterpreted his statement as meaning he was excited to eat her food, which only fed her delusions, so she promised to make them again. In the days that followed, Marin brought Gojo lunch every day, but each meal had rice in it, and the poor boy had no choice but to eat them with a smile on his face. 9 days before the cultural festival, the pageant rules were posted on the board for all to see. Marin's friends complained that the 1-minute time limit given to each contestant to charm the audience was too short, but Marin told them she could work with it. One of the girls then suggested she do the host champagne call, a performance by hosts to entertain their customers. They played a clip from Prez host of the hosts doing the champagne call, and after listening for a while, Marin created her own piece. After seeing what she wrote, the girls suggested she test it with their classmates to see if it worked, and Marin agreed. They then started discussing Rei and how she always made people swoon with just a look. The girls were fangirling so hard that they reminded Gojo, who had been cosplaying as a background character the entire time, of his namesake's stands at an anime convention. It wasn't until they heard him say something about the bento scene that they acknowledged his presence and began talking to him. During the conversation, Marin suddenly got the brilliant idea to roleplay as a host, and Gojo nearly folded. Nawa also joined in the fun, and just as they began celebrating their achievement, Shiki came looking for Gojo to help them move some things around in class. He also told the girls that they needed to pick the menu, so they all stood up and bid Marin goodbye. Now alone, Marin tried to sit and wait for Gojo's return, but soon became overwhelmed with boredom and began attempting to sew a button on the jacket. However, she quickly hit her work when Gojo walked into the room, telling her that their classmates wanted to practice the champagne call. She didn't want to move, but since she had no choice, she cackled like a witch and ran to the door. From there, she promised to return and fix the mistake, and it wasn't until after she ran off that Gojo noticed the botched work she'd done with the button. 4 days before the festival, Gojo sat in his room going through a magazine, hoping to find clues on how to make Marin's figure more masculine, but he got nothing. The next day, Marin put on a shapewear which made her look more plotless than your crush, because she was going to test out the suit. When her friends saw her in the suit, they all screamed that she looked good, but Gojo looked like he had a stomachache. He told Marin the suit was big, then squatted beside her to adjust it. When everyone looked at her again, they agreed that there was a vast difference and said she finally looked like the real Rei. It was then that Gojo realized he should have taken her measurements while she was wearing shapewear, so he apologized and promised to make the adjustments. The others felt he didn't need to, but Gojo was determined to make Marin look exactly like Rei. He also said that she needed to learn to act like a dude if she wanted to nail her role as Rei. His words reminded her of Amane and how his behavior led them to believe he was a girl. Their friends grew curious about who Amane was, so Marin showed them the photos they had taken at the cosplay event. While the girls were gushing over how good he looked, Morita rushed over and asked Marin to introduce him to Amane so he could shoot his shot. Marin agreed, but when she informed him that Amane was a guy, Morita became depressed. As he sat sulking in the corner, Gojo walked up to him and asked if he could teach Marin how to be a man since Mulan wasn't available. Morita happily accepted this role and immediately set to work shaping Marin in his image. By the time he was done instructing her, Marin's posture was more manly, and their classmates agreed he'd done a good job. Just then, Koga came to give them some water, bringing Murakami with him, but the latter was trying to act all mysterious. Apparently, he didn't want the others to know he was interested in the cosplay because they would figure out he liked the series and tease him for it. When he admitted that he was embarrassed, Gojo told him not to be, as the series was well known and loved. Gojo's words encouraged Murakami to drop his guard, and he asked Gojo if he could take a picture of the suit to show to his sister. Gojo agreed, feeling honored that his design was being appreciated. When Murakami took the photo, he made sure Marin's face didn't show, and when she realized it, she started complaining, while Gojo just observed everyone. The next day, Gojo and Marin got a fake rose and spray painted it to match Rei's rainbow rose, but their paint job didn't look nice. While they were trying to figure out what to do about the rose, Karen and Sierra dropped by. The two were disappointed to see that Marin wasn't in her costume because Nella had bragged to them about how cool Marin looked in it. When they noticed the botched rose, Sierra told them that she knew how to make a rainbow rose, so Marin and Gojo begged her to teach them. Sierra agreed, then told them to wait for her in the chemistry room before leaving to buy what they needed. When she returned, she was holding a real white rose and sweating heavily because she had to run back and forth. She then showed them how to make a rainbow rose. First, she cut the stem with a box cutter, then mixed food coloring into different test tubes before placing the cut ends of the stem into each tube. Next, she put the tubes in a beaker to prevent them from falling over and then assured them that by the next day, the rainbow rose would be ready. Gojo and Marin were in awe of what she'd done, so they asked how she'd learned how to do that. Sarah explained that she'd made one for her independent research project years back, so Gojo thanked her for sharing her knowledge with them. Sarah tried to brush his appreciation off as she didn't think she'd done anything that serious, but Gojo assured her that she had. He admitted that he had planned to buy another fake rose and hand paint each petal, since spray painting the first one had flopped. Realizing that she'd saved him all that stress made Sierra feel proud of herself, and she told them that it was always lovely when people relied on you. Later in the day, when Gojo and Marin arrived at his house, his grandfather welcomed them and informed them that dinner was ready. Marin was happy to have food and walked into the dining room, but Gojo lingered in the hallway, so his grandpa told him that until the festival was over, he would prepare all their meals. His grandfather's words made him realize that he'd been trying to do everything alone because he'd been afraid they would think of him as a burden. However, that wasn't the case because everyone around him was genuinely willing to help him with anything. On the first day of the cultural festival, Morita and Kaga were in the sewing room, complaining about how Class 3 had stolen all their customers. Gojo and Marin were also there doing the final suit fitting. Soon, Shiki came to bring Gojo some food because he'd been so busy he'd forgotten to eat. So Morita and Koga asked if Class 3 was still owing them. Shiki confirmed that they were, but said he wasn't going to sit back and accept defeat. He spoke with so much resolve that he rekindled the fire of winning in the boys, so they left with him to try to salvage their spot at the top. Gojo wondered if they could do it, and Marin assured him that they could because their classmates weren't quitters. She then began talking about how the characters on Prez Host always work to help each other, and said it was the main reason she loved the show. She then declared that she would strut onto the stage like a boss, wearing the clothes he made for her, and win the pageant for their class. The next day, which was the day of the pageant, Ma-rin rushed to the sewing room after helping out in class. As she admired the finished piece, Gojo asked her to get ready so he could do her makeup before the others arrived. Unfortunately for him, they all came just as he was about to begin because they were curious to see how cosplayers put on makeup. Having that much attention on him almost caused Gojo to have a panic attack, but the sound of Ma-rin's voice brought him back to his senses. When he also remembered her determined look from the day before and how everyone was counting on him, he pushed his anxiety aside and got to work. A few hours later, the pageant began, and the moment Ma-rin took her place on stage, the audience went wild. Even the student council president, who was supposed to be an impartial judge, found herself unable to look away from the heartthrob that was Ma-rin. From his spot in the crowd, Gojo watched Ma-rin, and the images of her past cosplays flooded into his mind. In that moment, she shone like a star, and he found himself unable to look away as feelings he didn't understand stirred up inside him. When Ma-rin credited her look to him, his breath hitched and his words failed him. The hosts then asked her to charm the crowd, and Ma-rin did just that with the help of her classmates. The council president's unexpected addition to her performance was enough to secure Ma-rin's win. Later, while their class celebrated their win, everyone crowded around Ma-rin and Gojo, praising them and asking questions about what they were curious about. Shiki then announced that he reserved a karaoke room for them to celebrate their win, and everyone was hyped. However, Gojo didn't think he deserved to attend the party since he only worked on the costume. Hearing this, his classmates told him he was talking nonsense because, if he hadn't made the costume, Ma-rin never would have won the pageant, and they wouldn't have beaten Class 3. They then managed to get him to attend the party, but after a few hours of listening to Nawa sing non-stop and making small talk, he stepped outside for some air. When Ma-rin found him, she was relieved because she'd assumed he'd gotten bored and gone home. As they chatted, he commended Ma-rin for the move she pulled with the student council president. Ma-rin bragged that she'd done it because the move was guaranteed to make anyone swoon, but then went red in the face after recalling when she and Gojo had been in a similar position. When Gojo asked if she was okay, she assured him she was. So he changed the topic to the karaoke place's other attractions. Realizing he hadn't been there before, Ma-rin took him to the arcade where he spent almost all of his money on a claw machine to win her a stuffed cat. As the happy Ma-rin hugged her gift, she noticed a Purikura photo booth and realized she had never taken a photo with Gojo before. When she mustered up the courage to ask him to take one with her, Morita, Koga, Shiki, and Murakami showed up. Ma-rin tried to get them to leave, but the boys ignored her and took photos with Gojo alone, much to her annoyance. Sometime later, Ma-rin went to the salon to get her hair done, and proudly showed off her plushie to her stylists. She also showed them the picture Gojo had taken with the guys, since he had given her his copy. As the hair appointment went on, Manabu suddenly pointed out to Ma-rin that she'd gained some weight. Upon hearing this, Hikaru began scolding her for not sticking to her diet as a model, but Manabu told him to shut his pie hole. Ma-rin just stared at herself in the mirror, trying to see what Manabu saw, but she couldn't. Raya also said she couldn't see any visible changes, so Manabu became convinced he was tripping. Much later in the day, after her photo shoot, Ma-rin once again showed off her plushie to her makeup artist and coworker, telling them her crush had won it for her. While they were discussing, the editor walked in and began praising her coworker for serving looks during the shoot, and Ma-rin backed her up. When the girls started blushing, the makeup artist revealed that her extra glow came from having a boyfriend. Ma-rin instantly became excited by the news and asked to see a picture of the lucky guy. Just then, the editor called Ma-rin's name, and she assumed she also wanted to compliment her, but was surprised when the woman said she gained weight. She then reminded Ma-rin that they would soon start shooting for the summer collection and told her to lose the extra weight before then. Later on, as Ma-rin walked home, she tried to convince herself that the editor had been wrong about her weight gain. However, she couldn't resist the urge to stop and stare at herself when she walked past a window. Suddenly, she realized something, so she ran the rest of the way home and went straight to her closet. She grabbed the black dress Gojo had made for her and put it on, but discovered that she couldn't zip it. Refusing to accept the truth, she tried on other clothes and only relaxed when one of them finally fit her. As she tried to convince herself that the other clothes didn't fit because she'd eaten a lot for dinner, she noticed her gut sticking out a little and lost it. The next day, while hanging out with her friends, she told them about her weight gain, and the girls said they hadn't noticed it. Well, Daya and Rune said they didn't notice. Nawa told her that she'd noticed since the cultural festival, and Ma-rin nearly choked her to death. Daya and Rune wondered how they hadn't noticed, but then recalled that she'd been putting on shapewear. Poor Ma-rin slumped against the chair, feeling all depressed, and said she had no choice but to go on a diet even though she didn't know how or why she'd gained weight. That night, she dropped by Gojo's house for dinner, and as usual, they welcomed her well. After the meal, she began washing up the dishes, but Gojo asked her to leave them because she needed to head home before it got too late. He offered to walk her to the train station, but Marin assured him that she could go alone, so he just walked her out. There, he gave her some food, which he'd packed for her breakfast the next day, and Marin thanked him for his thoughtfulness. As she began walking home, the smell of the food reached her, and she said she couldn't get home in time to eat it. However, her excitement was suddenly replaced by horror because she finally realized that Gojo's food was the reason she'd gained weight. The next day at school, while she was having lunch with Gojo, she told him about her weight gain and how she was now on a diet. Gojo was surprised to learn that she'd added weight and asked if she'd eaten anything outside her regular feeding schedule. Marin couldn't look him in the face when he asked this, so she mumbled a half explanation like an idiot and left him to figure out the rest. When Gojo realized that she'd been eating the breakfast he'd packed for her as a second dinner, he calculated her calorie intake and was shocked. Marin mistook his shock for disgust and began defending herself, saying it wasn't her fault that his food tasted so good. Not one to judge, Gojo assured her that if she went back to her routine, she would lose the extra weight. Just then, she got a notification on her phone, and after reading it, she invited Gojo to go shopping the next day. Gojo agreed since they weren't going to Shibuya, and Marin was pleased. The next day after school, the two went to a park, and Marin pulled out the loose socks she bought. She handed one to Gojo and asked him to help her stretch it out, since Hikaru had told her stretching the socks would bring out their beauty. Once the socks were stretched to her satisfaction, Marin put them on and excitedly showed them off to Gojo before asking him to take a photo of her. Gojo agreed, but was beyond shocked when she handed him a camera instead of her phone. He recalled all the times she'd said she wanted to buy one and couldn't believe that she'd already bought one. Marin laughed at his reaction and revealed that the camera had been delivered the day before. She was so proud of her purchase because she'd taken on so many gigs just to buy one. Curious, Gojo asked how she'd known which one to buy, and she told him that she'd asked Suzuka for advice. Suzuka had suggested the Kiss M since it wasn't that expensive, but Marin had only bought it because she deluded herself into believing that the M meant Marin. Gojo just stared at her in shock since there was no point in telling her that being Delulu wasn't the Solulu. He then read the camera's manual and, once he understood how it worked, was ready to take pictures of Marin. The excited girl showed off her pigtails and said she dressed extra cute for the shoot since she had decided not to cosplay until she'd gotten back in shape. She asked Gojo to set the camera to portrait mode, and he did so before beginning the shoot. The first photo turned out so clear and beautiful that Gojo couldn't help but gush over the camera's quality. Eventually, they continued the shoot, and Marin talked and walked around the entire time, so the photos came out looking very natural. After the shoot, they sat looking at the pictures, and Marin told Gojo that she would attend a cosplay event that weekend as a photographer. She'd heard Amane would be there and couldn't wait to take photos of him in his outfit. Gojo told her he was also attending the event, so she asked whether he was finally cosplaying, and he said no. He explained that after Amane took them to that cosplaying store, he became interested in learning about prop making. So he did some research and found a guy named Akira, who posted videos of how he made his props. He texted the guy, and the guy texted back, saying he would be at the cosplaying event weekend, which was why he was attending. Marin was happy for him, and after following his account, she went to his home to take photos of his grandfather. When the weekend came, Gojo and Marin went to the cosplay event together, but while Marin walked off to take photos, Gojo waited at the entrance for Akira to show up. Speaking of Akira, he was actually a she, and she was currently smoking in the bathroom while reading the message Gojo sent to her. During that time, Marin linked up with Suzuka, and the two talked about how they were twinning thanks to their cameras. After talking for a while, Marin pointed out that it was strange that Amane was yet to arrive, even though he texted her that he was already at the venue. It so happened that Amane was currently posing for a picture for an Otaku photographer. He'd been on his way to meet Marin, but someone had stopped him and asked if they could take his picture. Amane agreed, but was surprised when more people began lining up to take his picture, and now he didn't know how to get away from them. Fortunately, Marin came looking for him, and he was very relieved to see his friend. She complimented his outfit and then introduced him to Suzuka, who almost forgot how to speak because she couldn't believe that Amane was a dude. When she finally found her words again, she complimented him and said she would repay him for blessing her eyes with his beauty. Since giving him money would be rude, she offered to join the line of photographers and help him turn away anyone else who wished to photograph him. Amane didn't know it was possible to cut the line, so he thanked Suzuka for her help. After she left to take her spot, Marin asked Amane to do different poses and then started taking photos of him to her heart's content. When she finished, the other randos waiting in line had their turn, and soon it was Suzuka's turn to photograph Amane. A few photos later, she rounded up and thanked Amane for allowing her capture his beauty in portrait mode. After exchanging thank yous with Suzuka, Amane asked Marin whether Gojo had attended the event with her. Marin told him that he had, and explained that he wasn't with her because he was meeting up with a cosplayer. Hearing this, Suzuka told them she had also come with her friends and said one of them was meeting someone interested in her props. At that moment, Akira texted Gojo, telling him she was on her way, and the boy became excited to see his newfound idol. However, he was surprised when he discovered that Akira was a girl. She was also surprised to see that Gojo was a guy because she'd assumed he was a girl. Meanwhile, Suzuka introduced her cosplayer friend Miyako to Marin and Amane, and Marin was shocked when she saw how well Miyako bodied the character she was cosplaying. Miyako was impressed that Marin recognized her character even though it was from an old manga, and Marin explained that she'd read the manga. After they all chatted for a while, Marin asked Miyako if she could take photos of her, and Miyako agreed. After Marin finished, Suzuka took over, but when Marin saw her squatting to take a picture, she expressed surprise. Suzuka kindly demonstrated and explained how taking photographs from different angles improved their outcome, and Marin was amazed. She looked at the photo of Miyako she'd taken and told Suzuka she wanted to try taking pictures from other angles, too. Just then, Miyako asked whether she and Amane were free later because they were having an after-party, and she wanted to invite them. Back where Gojo was, he sincerely apologized to Akira for assuming she was a dude, and Akira apologized for thinking he was a girl. Once the whole issue with the mix-up and their names was settled, they got to talking about what brought them together. Gojo pulled out his phone, and as he showed her the photo she'd posted holding a katana, he asked which manga or series her character was from. Akira told him that it was her original character, and Gojo's admiration for her doubled. When he tried to glaze her, she cut him off, saying her character was mid and had been recycled one too many times. Of course, Gojo disagreed with her and told her he reached out because he thought her character was impressive. When Akira didn't respond, he panicked and began apologizing for overstepping his boundaries, but she just laughed and thanked him. She then told him that she was ready to answer all his questions about props, so Gojo began reading the things he'd written on his phone. Just then, Marin called him, saving Akira from having to listen to his long speech. When he answered the phone, Marin asked where he was because she wanted to come to him. Since he was with Akira, he wondered if she was okay with Marin joining them, and when she said yes, he told Marin where they were. Marin told him she was close by and began calling out to him from the top of the wall behind them. The moment Akira saw her, she became shocked and tried to hide her face when Marin came down to speak with Gojo. Marin excitedly told Gojo that Suzuka and her friend had invited them to a party, and when she finally gave him the chance to speak, he introduced her to Akira. Not surprisingly, she didn't notice that Akira was actively trying to avoid looking at her. At that moment, Suzuka arrived and was surprised to see Akira sitting there. It so happened that she was the second friend she mentioned to Marin, and she had also assumed that Gojo was a girl. Seeing as it was her first time meeting Gojo, Marin formally introduced Suzuka to him, and she told herself that he was a fine specimen. However, she quickly pulled herself together and texted Miyako, saying there was an emergency. Later, they all went to the after-party, and Marin began showing Gojo the photos she'd taken. While they were doing that, Amane noticed that Akira looked uncomfortable and wondered why. When their food arrived, Miyako asked Akira to pass her bag, and after she did, she pulled out a small doll from it. Upon seeing the doll, Gojo remembered his Hina doll and felt relieved, knowing he wasn't the only person with a doll obsession. As Miyako talked about her precious doll, she received a text from Aoi, another of their friends. Aoi told her that she couldn't make it for their weekend cosplay hangout, and when she told Suzuka, Suzuka said they would have to make do with just 3 of them. This sparked Marin's curiosity, so she asked what cosplay they intended to do. Suzuka said they were doing the coffin cosplay, and since Gojo had no idea what that was, Marin explained that it was a horror game with 6 nuns. Amane then asked if he could be their 4th member, and Miyako happily accepted him. However, when he suggested that Marin join them, the 3 friends froze in shock. Marin shyly told them that she couldn't join them because she was on a diet, so Amane suggested that she get a pre-made costume instead of having Gojo make one for her. Marin was still skeptical, but when Gojo gave his approval, she immediately accepted the offer, much to Akira's annoyance. She then asked if she could invite another cosplayer to join them, and Suzuka agreed. Marin excitedly began calling this mystery person, but Gojo quickly realized it was Seijuna and panicked. Seijuna wasn't pleased to receive Marin's call, and when Marin explained the reason, she turned her down and hung up immediately. Just then, Shinju walked up to her and asked who she'd been speaking with on the phone. Seijuna told her it was Marin. When she mentioned that Marin invited her to do a coffin cosplay, Shinju grew excited because the girl was a horror fanatic and she wanted to see her favorite characters come to life. Unfortunately, her happiness was short-lived because Seijuna told her that she turned down Marin's offer. Seeing how depressed her little sister had gotten over her decision, Seijuna had no choice but to swallow her pride and call Marin back to accept her offer. Afterwards, the sisters joined Marin and the others at the party. Suzuka and Miyako couldn't help themselves from gushing over the forever angry gnome because they were fans of her cosplays. Marin was equally happy to have them there, and Shinju didn't hide her excitement either. Amane, on the other hand, was more interested in knowing where Seijuna shopped, as her style screamed effortless goth, and he liked it. He showed her a picture as proof, so Seijuna told him the stores she frequented. Just then, Marin excused herself to go to the bathroom, and as soon as she stepped out, Amane noticed that Akira breathed a sigh of relief, but he didn't say anything. Miyako, who was busy looking for Seijuna's social media page, was shocked when she saw that the little shrimp had over 200,000 followers. She admitted that Seijuna's cosplays deserved all the recognition they received, and Akira asked whether Seijuna had used a professional photographer. Seijuna answered that she didn't, which surprised them because all her photos looked like professional work. Akira carefully analyzed them, explaining that it was clear that whoever the photographer was obviously loved and appreciated Seijuna. At that moment, they noticed that Shinju's head was smoking like a chimney and immediately guessed that she was the one taking her sister's photos. Seijuna confirmed it, making the girl even shyer, so Miyako asked if she would like to cosplay with them the following weekend. Shinju freaked out after hearing this because not only was she not a cosplayer, but the character Miyako wanted her to cosplay as was the game's main character. Mirin returned just then, and she agreed that Shinju should cosplay with them. Shinju tried to refuse and asked Gojo to take the spot, but Gojo refused, saying he wasn't cut out for that kind of stuff. Eventually, Miyako convinced Shinju to agree, then told the others which character each would cosplay. Gojo asked if there was anything he could help with, and Miyako told him that he could help make the props they needed. When she mentioned the scene they were doing, Shinju became visibly excited while Seijuna looked like she was about to offload her lunch. Marin offered to lend Gojo her game so he could play it and become familiar with the props they needed. According to her, it would take him 7 hours to complete, and even though Gojo dreaded it, he was glad the next day was Sunday. Suzuka then told Gojo that she would love to hear his thoughts on the game when he was through with it, and he assured her that he would give her a good review. When Shinju joined the conversation, Seijuna abruptly stood up and said she was going to the bathroom. As she walked out, Akira got up, saying she was going for a smoke, so Amane went with her. Gojo also followed suit, but his destination was the men's room. Once they were all gone, Marin told Shinju that she cosplayed as Rei during her school festival, but surprisingly, it was Miyako and Suzuka who reacted to the news. They pleaded with her to show them a photo, but Marin apologized, saying she hadn't taken any pictures that day. She further broke their fangirl hearts when she revealed that her outfit was from the bento scene. Meanwhile, Akira and Amane were in the smoking area getting to know each other. When Akira noticed Amane wasn't smoking, she asked why, and he admitted he didn't smoke. He said he followed her because he wanted to talk about Marin, whom he'd noticed she disliked. Just then, he noticed Gojo standing at the door, so Gojo apologized for eavesdropping on them. Akira then put out her cigarette and explained that she didn't want to be anywhere near Marin or to talk to her. Later, Gojo followed Marin home so he could play the coffin game, and after spending some time there, she reminded him he had to head home soon. Gojo told her he could stay late and explained that his grandfather was spending the night at his aunt's house because he had an early chiropractor appointment. Upon hearing this, Marin became excited and suddenly asked Gojo if he wanted to spend the night, shocking him. Seeing his reaction made her laugh, so she clarified that she didn't mean it, and Gojo began playing the game. About an hour later, he saved his progress, and Marin tried on the nun's outfit she'd bought after the party. Gojo told her that all she had to do was iron it, but when he saw her wig, he complained that the bangs were too long and would have to be restyled. With that out of the way, he informed her that it was time for him to head home. Marin didn't want him to leave, and the plot gods were on her side. When he tried to check the train schedule, he saw that service had been suspended due to an accident. Marin then asked him to spend the night again, but this time she wasn't joking. Gojo started stuttering like an idiot after hearing her offer, and tried making up excuses as to why he couldn't spend the night. Marin pointed out that they could buy the things he needed at the convenience store and asked him to reconsider her offer because no one knew when the trains would start running again. Gojo stood motionless for a few seconds, thinking everything over, and even though he was terrified about spending the night alone with Marin, he figured it was the best option for him. Later at the store, Marin went to buy some food while Gojo looked around for things he might need. When he found some energy drinks, the idea that he could drink them and stay awake the entire night popped into his head. He was still staring at his supposed savior when Marin found him, but the girl assumed he was in that aisle for a pack of rubber. When she asked if he was serious about buying it, the clueless boy confirmed that he was because he wasn't planning to sleep. As he walked away, Marin remained frozen in place as she was convinced that they were going to play tag all night long. After they returned to her place, Marin took a shower and put on matching plot covers in anticipation of what she thought was to come. When she went to the living room, she shyly told Gojo that the bathroom was all his, so he thanked her and left. Alone again, her nerves kept climbing, and she began wondering why he suddenly wanted to crack her. At that moment, she recalled the day she teased him about carrying protection and panicked because that boldness was nowhere to be found. When Gojo returned later, he went back to his spot on the floor to continue playing the video game. Thanks to the thoughts running around her head, Marin couldn't sit still, so she fell off the couch and hit her head on the floor. Gojo quickly rushed to check if she was feeling okay, but the overwhelmed girl wouldn't let him touch her. She then told him she needed time to calm down and asked him to wait until she had eaten something. A little while later, the two sat eating cup noodles, and Marin admitted that now that she had some food in her stomach, she wasn't as nervous as before. Gojo couldn't understand why she was anxious, and he didn't pry. Instead, he asked if eating noodles at that time wouldn't affect her dieting. Marin assured him it wouldn't, since the noodles were low in calories, so he dropped the issue. As they continued eating, Marin told Gojo that her father always made noodles late at night while he was watching movies. He tried to hide it from Marin, but she always busted him and fought him for the food. According to her, the food always tasted better because she wrestled it from him. After she finished her food, she told Gojo that she was craving something fried, but because of her diet, she couldn't have any. When Gojo got up to clear the table, he noticed that Marin was sleeping, so he took her to her bedroom and returned to the living room to continue his game. To keep himself awake, he drank some of his energy drink, but stopped when he noticed the dialogue on screen seemed off. Thinking he'd selected the wrong option, he tried to return to the last checkpoint, but what he found were the words, "I don't want to remember." Realizing he couldn't go back, he continued playing the game, and that was when he discovered why it was a horror game in the first place. The following morning, Marin woke up and, when she realized she was alone in her bedroom, freaked out. Immediately, she rushed to the living room to find Gojo, and when she spotted the empty energy drink cans, she realized she jumped to conclusions. She asked if he'd stayed up because he wanted to clear the game, and Gojo said no, but refused to explain further. Confused by his behavior, she asked if something had happened, and he told her that the game had tested his emotions. Feeling sorry for him, she offered to make him something sweet for breakfast, but that made him recall the gory dinner scene, and his dinner crept back up. That night, he called Suzuka and Shinju to give them his game review, and while he looked like he'd been scared for life, the two girls were ecstatic. It turned out that Mera, the game's main character, was behind all the murders. However, at the end of the game, he discovered that Mera was locked up in an asylum and had imagined everything. The fact that she ate all her sisters made him sick to the stomach, but Shinju and Suzuka seemed to love that scene. Mira even talked about how the title screen at the end was beautiful, and that was when Gojo realized the girl was a little nuts. After getting off the call, Shinju went to speak with Sajuna and was surprised to find her working on her wig. Sajuna said it was the least she could do for her since she'd been communicating with Suzuka and the others on her behalf. Moved by her sister's thoughtfulness, Shinju thanked Sajuna and asked if she could stay and watch her style her own wig. Meanwhile, Marin was at home, drowning in embarrassment over her assumptions the previous night. She couldn't believe that she had gotten her hopes up for nothing and wondered if she should finally confess her feelings to Gojo. She recalled all the times he freaked out when she or anyone else mentioned them dating and figured he only saw her as a friend. Unable to help herself, she pictured herself confessing to him. And instead of accepting or rejecting her, he began to avoid her. This fake scenario made her cry, and she told herself that she couldn't bear it if he started avoiding her again. The next day, she took the train with Nawa after school, and Nawa asked why she looked so depressed. Marin didn't want to expose herself, so she asked Nawa what she'd do if one of her friends asked her out. Nawa said she'd turn the person down, and when Marin asked why, Nawa asked if she'd agree to date the dumb Morita just because they were friends. Seeing her point, Marin said even Morita wouldn't agree to date her. Later, she arrived at Gojo's house for dinner, but he met her in the hallway and told her to leave, which confused her. Seeing her reaction, he quickly explained that he'd prepared fried fish for dinner because she'd mentioned that she wanted something fried. However, he discovered too late that people on diets weren't allowed to eat fried food for dinner and didn't want to put her on the spot. Realizing that he'd gone through all that trouble because she had randomly mentioned her craving, Marin was moved, and she told him she would eat it. Gojo didn't think it was a good idea, but she said she'd call that day her cheat day. During dinner, she happily devoured her food, but suddenly went quiet when her worries crept back into her head. So when it was time for her to leave, she shyly asked Gojo to walk her to the station. On their way there, she tried to confess to him, but chickened out at the last moment, so she asked if she could come over for dinner the next day. Gojo told her that she could, and for some reason, she told him she would pay for the food. He quickly refused, saying she was already paying him enough for making her outfits, so Marin gave up. Eventually, they parted ways, and as she was on the train, she was contemplating confessing her feelings. She worried that confessing her feelings would destroy their friendship, and that made her even more depressed. When she left the train station, some guys tried to hit on her, but she wasn't in the mood to entertain riskless idiots, so she shot them down rudely. As she stormed off, she became even more pissed and finally decided to confess to Gojo. Later that week, Marin went shopping with Shinju, and while they were picking out the things they needed, Shinju wondered aloud whether things were going well at the studio. For context, that day, when it was just her, Marin, Suzuka, and Miyako in the room, she told them that she was worried Sejuna would bail on them because she only cosplayed magical girls. According to her, Sejuna wanted to try doing other cosplays, but because she was vertically challenged, she never attempted them. The girls assured her that Sejuna wouldn't bail, but said they first had to convince her that she could do other cosplays. To do that, they agreed to trick her into helping them look for a location and then get her to cosplay as one of the characters she admired. They were all convinced it would be a welcome surprise, but back in the present, Suzuka and Miyako realized they were wrong when Sejuna scolded them for tricking her. When she attempted to leave, they chased after her, and Miyako told her she knew she was refusing to cosplay the character because she lacked plots and had a youthful face. This statement stopped Sejuna in her tracks, but before she could dispute it, Miyako assured her that she had a way to fix the issue. Suzuka added that there was no harm in trying and said Sejuna might regret it if she left. They then sincerely apologized for being too forward, but their words had gotten to Sejuna. She asked how they had known about her other insecurities, and Suzuka said it was because they were plotless sisters in arms. Hearing this, Sejuna agreed to stay, but she warned them that she would leave if she didn't like the outcome. Meanwhile, Akira arrived at Gojo's place so they could work on the props together. He told her it would just be them, since his grandfather had already left earlier that day. When they went to his room, she noticed the brushes he used for painting the Hina dolls and asked why the tips were so thin. Gojo explained that it had to be like that so they could achieve the doll's expressions. As she looked around the room, she spotted his Hina doll and praised his talent, then told him it was time to get to work. Back at the studio, Suzuka gave Sejuna silicone plot covers, and when she wore them, her plots went from looking like grapes to looking like oranges. Next, she sat her in front of a mirror and, as she began putting her hair in a wig cap, talked about her struggles as a cosplayer. She said her favorite character was a tall dude with godlike features, and the first day she attempted to cosplay him, she realized that she lacked a lot of things. She also felt depressed and considered quitting. However, her love for the character kept her trying. The more she cosplayed him, the more she figured out ways to make herself look similar to him in every way. Curious, Sejuna asked Miyako how long she'd been cosplaying, and Miyako answered that she'd been cosplaying for 10 years. She then told her she would show her what she'd learned in those 10 years as she prepared her makeup. Back at Gojo's place, he and Akira were working on some eyeballs, and Akira commended his work. Gojo admitted that it was his first time making props, and when he thought about how he bought all of Marin's props, he said he wished he'd made them himself. Akira told him he could do so going forward, and he grew excited just thinking about it. Eventually, they finished what they were working on, and while they were taking a break, Gojo asked Akira how long she'd been making props. She said she started doing it recently after meeting Suzuka and Miyako, who invited her to cosplay with them. Intrigued, Gojo asked if he could see photos from their group cosplays, so she showed him the one where she was dressed as President Luna. Gojo was surprised to learn that she was the one, so she showed him a few other photos. When she admitted that she wasn't into cosplaying, he asked why she always agreed to Suzuka and Miyako's requests. Akira recalled the day she'd snuck in to buy a mystery box for a series and had been seen by the two girls. Initially, she thought they would mock her for having an interest in something like that, but was surprised when they revealed they liked it too. From then on, they became friends, and Akira found that she always wanted to fulfill their requests, no matter what they were. Back at the studio, Shinju and Marin arrived to find Sejuna looking breathtaking in her costume. Shinju rushed forward to compliment her sister's looks, prompting Sejuna to relax as she finally accepted that she slayed the cosplay. On the other hand, Marin stood crying tears of joy at the entryway because the girl was a drama queen with no control button. Eventually, it was time for them to take photos, and Miyako did a good job of directing Shinjin on which angles to take. Each photo turned out well, and Miyako felt proud of herself even though she found it creepy how all three girls were taking shots of Sejuna at the same time. After the shoot, Marin and Shinju cosplayed two male characters, and when they wandered off to take photos, Sejuna thanked Suzuka and Miyako. She also admitted that before that day, she'd been seriously considering giving up cosplay because she felt she was getting too old for it. The girls were surprised by her admission and told her they knew middle-aged people who still cosplayed. They encouraged her not to give up on doing the things she loved, as there wasn't an age limit for having fun. Suzuka even joked that cosplaying as an adult was more fun because they could buy whatever they wanted. The only problem was that all their money was spent on cosplay, and Miyako backed her up, saying she often forgot how expensive cosplaying was. Sajuna started laughing after hearing this, and the girls joined in. Back at Gojo's house, he told Akira that they were similar because he was going to do everything in his power to fulfill all of Marin's requests. Later, Marin and the girls had some takoyaki, and while they were eating, Shinju got up to speak to her mother on the phone. Marin then asked about Akira, causing Suzuka and Miyako to freak out and begin stuttering. To their surprise, Marin said she knew Akira disliked her because when she returned from the bathroom the other day, she noticed she was talking to everyone, even though she'd been quiet the entire time Marin was there. Suzuka and Miyako tried to come up with an explanation, but their words failed them. Sajuna then spoke up, saying it was impossible to control the way a person felt about another person. Marin agreed, and the others apologized because they felt bad about the situation. The next day, while Marin was getting ready for the cosplay shoot, she promised herself that she would confess to Gojo that same day. She tried practicing with her plushie, but ended up laughing at how silly she sounded. Just then, Gojo rang the doorbell, so she went to let him in, then went completely mute as they sat in her room. Since he needed to do her makeup, he held her chin and made her look up at him, but that just made her even more nervous. When they arrived at the studio, Suzuka welcomed them, and Gojo was impressed by the all-black set. Suzuka explained that she had specifically requested this design instead of a bright church set, as the black backdrop would draw more attention to the people. When Marin began admiring the golden cups on the table, Gojo came to stand beside her, so she panicked and ran to the dressing room to hide. Suzuka was confused by her behavior, but brushed it aside and turned to address Amane. To her surprise, the boy was already undressing, so she quickly tried to cover her eyes. Amane apologized for not giving her a heads up and explained that he was used to changing in the same room as his sister. Not surprisingly, the cultured woman told him to carry on, which made Amane question her morals. Meanwhile, in the dressing room, Marin saw that Sajuna and Shinju were already in their costumes. As she complimented them, Miyako popped out of the room she'd been changing in and told Shinju it was time to wrap her melons. While she did that, Marin watched them and recalled what happened the last time Shinjin cosplayed, so she promised that she'd be on the lookout for when her girls attempted another prison break. Soon, they began the photo shoot, and each photo came out beautifully, just like Suzuka said they would. Before they began preparing for the dinner scene, Marin and Amane asked to see the pictures while the others remained in their seats. When it was finally time, Suzuka and Gojo began putting blood and other props into the plates, but Sajuna willed herself not to look at them. She stared ahead so hard that Marin assumed she was trying to stare her down and asked what the problem was. The annoyed Sajuna said she wasn't looking at her, and as she told her to mind her business, the fake cake was brought over. Seeing the cake tripled Sajuna's anxiety because she'd been too scared to finish the game, so she didn't know how the story ended. Just then, Gojo threw the remaining fake blood onto the cake, covering the entire table in red splotches. In the heat of the moment, Sajuna looked down at her plate, and what she saw brought an old memory to mind. That day, she'd been clearing the table after dinner when her mother had told her that she'd added blended vegetables to the meal. Sajuna had been horrified because she disliked vegetables, and her own mother had tricked her into eating them. Back in the present, Sajuna kept staring at her bloody plate like it was a real murder scene. Eventually, they finished the rest of the photo shoot. Afterwards, Shinju told everyone she felt like she was in the real game. She thanked them for letting her walk in Mira's shoes, even though Mira was more psychotic than the Joker. As everyone discussed how to clean up the set, Gojo noticed Sajuna was missing and went looking for her. When he found her, he told her he'd expected her to be a no-show since she disliked everything horror. Sajuna told him she'd come because of Shinju, but then let it slip that she'd enjoyed the time she spent with everyone. As she complained that she had failed as a tsundere, she suddenly passed out because of the earlier shock, causing Gojo to scream in panic. Immediately, Suzuka, Miyako, and Amane rushed over to help her. Meanwhile, Marin was in the changing room helping Shinju unwrap her chest. When she finished, Shinju stepped out to get something and ran into Akira outside, so Akira helped her fix her collar. As she stared at the older girl, it suddenly dawned on her that they didn't take any photos with just Akira and Marin. Marin came out of the changing room just then, so Shijin pleaded with her to wait while she grabbed a camera to take their photo. Apparently, she loved the scenes where their characters fought and wanted to take a picture of them together. When she rushed inside the changing room, Marin called out to her to stop and said Akira wouldn't want to take a photo with her because she couldn't stand her. Both Akira and Shinju were shocked by her words, and Akira was reminded of her conversation with Amane and Gojo the other day. When she told them she didn't want to be around Marin or talk to her, it was because she knew she wouldn't know how to act around her. Apparently, ever since Suzuka showed her Marin's picture, she had become her #1 fan. Her coldness towards her had all been an act, and she regretted it more than anything. She soon started crying and told the boys that she didn't know how she'd react during the photo shoot. Back in the present, Gojo and the others heard Akira scream, so they immediately rushed out and explained to Marin that Akira was her biggest fan. Upon hearing this, Marin squealed in delight and ran over to Akira, saying she'd never had a fangirl before. She then asked Shinju to take their picture, and all Akira could do was stand and stare, as she couldn't believe how lucky she was. The impromptu photo session ended with Akira screaming again, and later, while Shinju was comforting her, her friends apologized to Marin for not telling her the truth earlier. Marin assured them she wasn't angry and pointed out that everything that happened was a reminder that it was always good to speak one's mind to avoid problems. She then said she wanted to thank Akira again for standing by her, but Suzuka and Miyako begged her not to. Afterwards, the group left the studio, but Akira had to be half carried by her friends since she still hadn't recovered from her fangirling episode. Eventually, they all parted ways, and Marin was left alone with Gojo. During the train ride, she thought about confessing her feelings, but she was so tense that she couldn't get a word out. After they got off the train, Gojo offered to walk her home, and her mini-self appeared to wish her good luck. However, despite the pep talk, Marin still didn't say anything to Gojo as they walked to her apartment. Even when they arrived, she was still too much of a wimp to speak to him or even look him in the eye. Gojo tried to ask if she was okay, but got distracted by the setting sun. As they stared at it, he told Marin that making props made him realize he wanted to create more things with and for her. Seeing how determined he looked made Marin think of all their fun moments together, and after that flashback, Marin couldn't bring herself to say anything. However, when he started walking away, she grabbed his shirt and nervously asked if he'd like to take a selfie with her. Gojo said yes, and the excited girl leapt onto him without warning, then took the photo. Their position made him feel embarrassed, so he tried to put her down, but accidentally slapped her phone out of her hand. Would Marin ever confess her feelings to Gojo, or would she continue limiting herself to the friend zone? If you watched this video up to this point, comment Gojo is mid to confuse the comment readers. Also, check out this next video right here.